watch basketball for a while instead? Should we watch basketball?
Hey there. Thank you both for coming. You know, I was just reading an article this weekend and then I closed it and then I couldn't find it again to finish and share about how it was Bloomberg Cities or is it the Atlantic talking about how Zoom is great, but not having people come. Like it needs to be a true hybrid for communities so that you have a room of people in community that are talking about issues rather than all separated, which I found interesting because we've gotten to this point where we're all so used to being just calling in from remote and we have this empty room. And so it's nice to see two of you. I hope that over time we'll see more. Thank you. All right, we have 4 council members on Zoom and the other 2 here. So we'll go ahead and start the meeting with a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Bajent,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Woodings,
Here.
all present.
Thanks. Next up, we have a request for approval of the minutes of March 16th.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of March 16th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
And next, we have the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor, I
Yes.
have been asked that we defer resolutions 14721 and 14821 to the April 6th City Council meeting, as there are issues with both of those that staff needs more time to complete.
Did you say
Second.
147 and 148?
Yes.
Okay.
And then with that, I would move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
All right, next up, we have ordinances on first reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on first reading be read by numbered and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection?
ORD-8-21, an ordinance amending Boise City Code, Title 6, Chapter 10, Article A, Parking Regulations, to amend the block face definition in Section 4, to amend Section 11 to refine vehicle extended parking prohibition, to amend Section 12 to refine non-vehicular extended parking prohibition, to add a new Section 13 that requires movement from a block face after the expiration of the metered or signed parking period, to renumber all the sections subsequent to the newly added Section 13 and provide an effective date. ORD-9-21, an ordinance CAR 200014 for property located at 313 South Orchard Street and 5151 and 5007 West Franklin Road, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property, particularly described in Section 1 of this ordinance from A-1 Open Lands Park to PCD Pedestrian Commercial with Design Review Overlay, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Thank you. And we
Madam
have-
Mayor, we have one more ordinance on first
Oh,
reading.
Sorry about that.
ORD 10-21, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 10, Chapter 4, Sections 1-2, 1-5, 2-1 through 2-6, 3, 3-1 through 3-6, 4-3, and 4-1, deleting Section 4-4 and adding Section 1-6 and 2-7 to add legal authority, to provide definitions, to add and amend scope of applicability, to reorganize and amend residential collection, container, trash, recycling, and compost provisions, including limitations to bulky items for collection, to add service accounts for non-property owners, to reorganize and amend commercial collection, container, frequency, and service agreement provisions, to clarify construction and demolition hauling provisions, to amend general requirements and prohibitions, to reorganize and amend provisions relating to franchise agreements and permits, to amend provisions relating to fees for services, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. And now second reading.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the second reading calendar be read by number and title only and filed for the third reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD 6-21 and ordinance CAR 20-00012 for property located at 921 North Shamrock Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property, particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance, from single-family residential R-1A to single-family residential R-1C, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date. ORD 7-21 and ordinance CAR 20-00011 for property located at 1511 South Robert Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property, particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance, from general commercial C-2D to residential office with design review and development agreement R-OD DA, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Thank you. We have nothing on third reading, no unfinished business. So now we'll move into public hearings. And as we do these this evening, this first one will be a little simpler. Our staff will present, then the applicant will present. I'll check in to see if there's a member of the neighborhood association of record that's on Zoom to then present. And then from there, I'll go through the names first of people. Unless the two of you want to testify and then leave, we could have you two talk. Nope, you're going to say. The people that have signed up in advance, and then the clerk will start calling on people as you raise your little Zoom hand for the items if I didn't call your name. So with that, Cody, we first have CAR 20-23.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This item include, as you noted, two applications. The first is a rezone of 0.67 acres located at 1717 South Federal Way from R2 or medium density residential
I'm going to ask you to just pull it a little higher. So yep,
Sorry.
great.
to R3, is that
That's
R3D
better.
or multifamily residential with design review. The second application is a preliminary plat comprised of 1 common and 36 buildable lots on 1.6 acres. If you're thinking this looks familiar, it's because it should. We heard a similar proposal back in October. The applicant has actually acquired an adjacent parcel, so they're back with a slightly larger project. Both applications were heard by the Planning Commission in February, along with the planned unit development. That planned unit development did allow the reduction in lot sizes and internal setbacks. The commission, as noted in the record, did approve the planned unit development and recommended approval of the rezone and subdivision. The decision on that planned unit development was not appealed, so it is only the rezone and subdivision before you this evening. The proposed R3 or multifamily residential zone is compatible with surrounding zoning and development. As you see in the map, we have pedestrian commercial zoning adjacent to the south, and then C2 or general commercial zoning to the north. Along with commercial uses, both of those zones allow residential development up to 43.5 units per acre. That's the same density allowed in the proposed zone. As you can see, we also have R3 or that multifamily residential zone further south along Federal Way. Given this and the fact that we recently approved R3 zoning for part of the project, it does make a lot of sense in this instance. As detailed in the packet, and as you'll recall from last time, the rezone is further supported by the fact that we have transit about 1/10 of a mile from the site. There's also a mix of commercial and office uses within walking distance of the project. The site really does lend itself to higher density residential development. And then the inclusion of the design review overlay will ensure the project is appropriately designed. The project does still have to go through that design review process before construction. Moving on to the subdivision itself. Again, it includes 36 buildable lots on the 1.6 acre site. Each lot will be occupied by an attached townhome. The layout is somewhat unique in that the interior homes are oriented to a common space. As you can see, the project actually also presents itself nicely to Federal Way. Those units along Federal Way front the street and will each include a separate entrance. Vehicular access has been accommodated through a single service drive from Federal Way. That drive is located on the southern property line and is shared with adjoining parcels, and that's ensured through a condition of approval. A detached sidewalk already exists along Federal Way. That planter is actually not wide enough to accommodate trees, so the new trees will be provided behind the sidewalk, and then additional trees will be provided throughout the site to mitigate the few that are being removed. In terms of connectivity, as you'll recall from last time, there's really no opportunity for street connections or public street connections in this area. However, we continue to believe there is merit to a pedestrian connection to the west. Unfortunately, there is a private easement, as you'll recall, on that adjoining property that precludes that connection at this time. Still, a condition of approval does require an easement on this project to facilitate that connection should things change in the future. Again, the design was approved as a plan unit development by the commission previously, so it is only this rezone and subdivision that's before you this evening. Consistent with the commission's action, we are recommending approval of both applications this evening. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for Cody? All right. Thanks, Cody. The applicant, Ben Semple, are you with us tonight? You there?
Hi, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Ben Semple, 1014 South LaPointe Street, Suite 3, Boise, Idaho, 83706. Yeah, I want to thank Cody for his presentation. He really wrapped up what our application is proposing. As he stated, this is kind of an extension or expansion of the previous project that was approved. With the purchase of that third parcel, we saw the opportunity to get a little bit more density. We're still well below the density of units per acre on the project. Even at R3, we're at about 22.5 units per acre. And it was revised to incorporate one point of access. As that was approved, we have been working with the fire department. We're going to be fire sprinkling all these buildings because we're over the threshold for a single point of access. But with that, as well as two areas to turn around on the site for emergency vehicles, we feel that it's very safe and very appropriate. That shared access is more than wide enough. We'll actually be paving all of it. Currently, half of it's paved and half of it's gravel. So we'll be taking care of the paving on the other half of that so that both the properties to the south have a nice, clean, paved access to their properties, not only during construction, but then obviously after construction. The concept is still the same, single-family townhomes, and we are open to the pedestrian easement and connectivity to the west. While it's not available at this time, we will be putting that, we'll be complying with that condition of approval to make sure that that is included. So if that does ever occur in the future, that there will be a pedestrian connectivity option there. And we're in agreement with all of the other conditions of approval in the staff report and really look forward to this project getting built. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions for Ben?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, Ben. I know that there are a fair number of large trees on this site, but the layout really doesn't allow the retention of the majority of them. Are there any that are going to be saved?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, yeah, Some of them interior to the site either have been removed. The seller of the third parcel, part of their condition of the sale to the developer was that they got to harvest trees for firewood for their cabin in Idaho City. So they've taken some of those down already. We're trying to maintain, or we do have the maintaining of a lot of them along the property periphery, because there's really just some sidewalk that goes next to them. So there's some large evergreens along the north and west boundaries that will remain. The stuff interior, with the grading, because there is quite an elevation change from Federal Way to the property. They do have to come out with the grading operations, but I think we're over our mitigation. If I remember correctly from our mitigation plan, we're installing a large amount of trees on this, particularly in the center sort of courtyard area with the project. So definitely exceeding the mitigation that's required for the site. And there's one tree I do want to mention. There's a red oak that has to come down. And there was a presentation that was given at Design Review not too long ago at a work session. And I want to work with the Boise, I think it's the Treasure Valley Canopy Network. I don't think I'm getting that exactly correct, but there's a woodworkers kind of guild, I guess, here in town that we want to work with to salvage some of that wood and use it, as well as potentially, mill some of it and use it with the project. But yeah, we're aware of those coming down, and we are addressing that with mitigation efforts as well as other efforts too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was going to ask if you knew about the Urban Wood Group and maybe being able to salvage some of that. So good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, it doesn't look like there are, so I'm going to just check in. The Vista Neighborhood Association would be the neighborhood of record here. Is Dave Kangas or someone else from Vista online?
Not that I see, Madam Mayor, and no one has their hand raised.
All right, thank you. Is anybody from the public, or neither of you are here for this? Oh, great. Okay. So if nobody in the room is here to testify on this, has anybody raised their hand on Zoom to testify? We didn't expect so, but I just want to make sure.
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. Before I close the hearing, any further follow-up? Nope. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and now the matter is before you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve CAR 20-00023, 1717 South Federal Way, rezone of 0.667 acres from R2 medium density residential to R3D medium family residential with design review.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just real quick. Ben, I remember the first time that this came up for the other piece of property, and we had some conversations about that connection piece to the west. And we've had quite a few different things that you've brought to the table now. And I've always been really impressed with how well you've really thought about that connection aspect comprehensively. And also kind of taking the lead with looking at reusing some of that wood. I actually found out about that last week on Treasure Valley Canopy Network's Instagram page and saw some of the projects that they were doing, and being able to incorporate that into the existing to the development there, I think is really unique. So I just wanted to thank you for putting together another good proposal for us.
Great. If nothing else. Oh, all right. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move approval of Tallapoosa subdivision, SUB 20-00064, Boise City preliminary plat at 1709, 1711, and 1717 Federal Way.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And next up, we have CAR 20-25. I've got a list of some people that signed up in advance. I know that, I think you're here for this, you signed up on paper. And then as more raise their hands, we'll call on you when we get to the public hearing part of it. But with that, Celine, why don't you start us off? And then, of course, let's see, we've got, if the applicant will just be ready to go, and we'll move from Celine to the applicant to Southeast Neighborhood Association, Eric Berg, and then to the public.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
before Celine
Yes.
starts, if I could, I'd like to disclose on the record that for the hearing regarding the project at Boise Avenue in protest, CAR 20-000225, that myself and the mayor both attended a meeting on November 18th, 2020 at City Hall to discuss the September 29th, 2020 denial of the rezone application and findings adopted on October 13th of 2020. The meeting was also attended by Deb Nelson, who's counsel for the applicant, applicant's representatives Mitch Cordy and Brant Stiles, and on behalf of the city, Saline Accord, Cody Riddle, Rob Lockwood, and as I said, myself and Mayor McLean. Very short meeting, lasted approximately 20 minutes, and it occurred after the denial of the rezone and the time to appeal. The denial had passed. There was no new application on the table at the time, and the discussion was simply around the denial of the project and the reasons for that decision. I made a few brief comments. Mayor McLean listened, and subsequent to that, the applicant did file a reapplication.
Thank you. Celine, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Mayor,
And
council
welcome, good to
members.
see you.
Yeah. The next item tonight is a request for a rezone with a development agreement at 1909 and 2001 West Boise Avenue. The site is on the edge of downtown and southeast planning areas and adjacent to the Boise State campus at the intersection of Boise Avenue, Protest Road, and Beacon Street. As you recall, this site had a similar or a different hearing last October. This request is substantially different project for you to review this evening. So the project site is designated mixed use in the comprehensive plan and is located in the heart of an activity center. This designation allows for almost every zoning district so as to encourage more active uses. The site is currently split zoned with R2 and C1D zones. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning to RODDA, which is residential office with design review and a development agreement. Sorry, I can't see my notes with my mouse. The RO zone is present in the neighborhood across the street, and if approved, the RO zone would allow the project outright with only a design review committee approval. And due to the uniqueness of the site and location, there is a development agreement attached, which ensures compatible development within the area with the conditions of approval. You'll have seen in the project report that we did analyze the current zone, the proposed zone, and any other potential zone that could be proposed here, and all of their different allowances with regards to setbacks and density. I won't go through all of that analysis, but in summary, the height, the setbacks, and density proposed with the project are very closely aligned with the other potential zoning districts, such as the R3, the C1, or C2 zones. In short, the planning team believes the RO zone with the DA is consistent with the long-term vision for the area. So the concept includes a 3-story structure with 175 units and 547 bedrooms. All of the units on the ground floor will be walk-ups with front doors along the street to help provide a more pedestrian-scaled project with activation on the street. The applicant also intends to underground the overhead power lines and provide trees along the street with detached sidewalks. Also on the ground floor is a 2,375 square foot commercial space at the intersection, along with a public plaza and bus shelter. The mix of housing and the mix of uses were 2 of the reasons the council denied the request last time, and both will now help activate and revitalize the activity center. The project also includes 274 underground parking spaces, 550 bicycle parking spaces, along with a scooter or e-bike hub and a car share program. Council mentioned last time that pedestrian and bicycle safety was of the utmost importance. The applicant has now proposed a pedestrian crossing to the north at Joyce Street, which as of this afternoon, ACHD has now approved. And they also proposed improving the bike lane on the north side of Boise Avenue, but again, as of this afternoon, ACHD has not approved that request. Discussions were held around tree mitigation last time. And, many of the trees on site are in poor health, while others are actually in excellent condition and certainly add to that urban tree canopy of the neighborhood. Typically, mitigation is required only for right-of-way trees, but the applicant is committing to more than that for a total of 176 caliper inches. The landscape plan shows about 100 caliper inches on site. So the Parks Department has suggested the remaining mitigation occur off-site within 2 miles, in which the applicant has agreed to. Those sites 2 miles around the site can be at Terry Day Park, Manitou Park, or Ivy Wild Park is what's been at least identified by Parks at the moment. Lastly, the applicant has proposed 2 packages related to housing, which highlight the applicant's commitment to and awareness of the impact to current residents, while also including a mix of housing costs within the development. So the first package is a tenant assistance package, the minimum 6 months advance notice, working with a management company in town to find a new home, funds to cover the increase in rents to the tenants that may incur over the first 2 years of moving out, and an affordable option to return after the project is built. That affordable option is the income restricted housing. Right now they're proposing 10 units offered at 60% AMI for the first 3 years of operation. And those are provided first to the current tenants and then to the general public. And when I say right now, I say it because the applicant has committed to applying for the city's housing initiative program. So that may change the number of units, the term, and the rate of which the housing is provided for. Overall, the planning team believes the project is suitable for the area. The conditions on the screen are recommended for the draft or for the development agreement, as well as what has been proposed by the applicant within the tenant assistance package and the affordable housing package. So in conclusion, Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the rezone, and I stand for any questions.
Questions for Celine? I can't see all council members on Zoom, so if you have something, feel free just to speak up.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I'll ask these now, are probably questions for the developer. With the tree mitigation, the off-site tree mitigation, will the Parks Department work with the applicant to locate those sites? Will they be public sites on public property, or would private sites be eligible if we could identify such, especially sites maybe that would meet some of our equity goals?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, as of now, the Parks Department has only identified public sites, but I'm sure if there was some public-private partnership that the Parks Department or Parks team is aware of, we could certainly work through that. Right now, we're just having the applicant work with the Parks Department just because those sites haven't been finalized at this time.
Okay, thank you. And then second question on the transportation alternatives, was there any discussion about how the, if this is approved, how the development would be marketed? I know that when my own children attended university out of state in locations where it was hard for them to have a car, we looked specifically for housing that was marketed as, not needing to own a car in order to be able to access the things that you needed.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, I believe that might be a better question for the applicant to answer. I'm not privy to their marketing.
I just thought I'd get them
Fine.
on the table
Yeah.
now. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, sorry, I was reading a message on the Zoom. It looks as though we can move on to the applicant at this point.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name's Deborah Nelson. My address is 601 West Bannock Street. And I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation here, if I can.
And Deborah, if you could get to the council president's question, at some point, maybe in your presentation, that'd be great, just about the marketing piece. I don't want to lose that question.
We certainly will. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'm here for the applicant, Collegiate Development Group, or CDG, and Brant Stiles from CDG is here with me as well and will also be presenting. Thank you so much to the city staff for all their work and the detailed presentation. I cannot see on the virtual format how much time has been given to me. May we have 20 minutes?
You know what? It was started, let's pause that. It was started at 10. Is that what we normally do, or is it 12? Okay. It runs 10 to 15. We started with 10, and whatever you need up to 15 we can allow, but then the neighborhood association will have that too.
Happy to have them have that same amount of time. Thank you.
Great.
We'll jump right in then. The city of Boise, as you know, needs housing of all types. We know that you're working on this throughout the city. Just a few summary data points relevant to this application. Boise has the lowest multifamily vacancy rate in the top 100 markets in the country. The high demand, low supply is causing rapid rent growth at a current pace of 16% per year. And specifically, more housing is needed to support BSU students and employees. Fewer than 5,500 on and off-campus beds are available to serve nearly 13,000 undergraduate students. And a very telling and recent data point, occupancy rates for off-campus housing remain at or near 100% as of January of this year. And rents have continued to increase each year. This lack of supply has caused students to migrate into the Southeast Boise neighborhood, displacing families. This project that's before you tonight will help bring 500 students out of that surrounding neighborhood, freeing up other housing while also providing housing opportunities for young professionals and university employees. CDG filed a prior application, as Celine described, which the council denied based on concerns that the project needed a commercial use, housing units that appeal to some non-students, better pedestrian and frontage design, and more specific tree mitigation. And so CDG redesigned the project to address those concerns, worked with ACHD on the pedestrian and street improvements, and worked with the city staff and forester on tree mitigation. The project, as redesigned, has 175 apartments with 547 bedrooms. Amenities include the 3 interior courtyards, pool, fitness, workspaces, and lounges. The building is limited to 3 stories, which was really important to our neighbors, down from the original 5 and then 4 that were proposed. The building has underground parking to minimize the massing, and we've added 10 spaces with this redesign, also a request spoken of at the last hearing. We've removed condenser units off of the roof, colored the roof green instead of white. We've pulled the building back from the hillside 70 feet, creating that 70-foot setback at the rear property line. We've relocated the drainage ditch to be further away from the base of that hill as well. Also, as requested during the last application, the redesign project now includes that retail space that Celine highlighted at 2,375 square feet. To further improve the streetscape, the applicant has agreed to bury the power lines and to plant class 2 trees to have more mature trees at the outset. To improve transit accessibility, we're installing a corner bus stop with shelter and seating. And as requested by BSU and council during the prior application process, we will construct an off-site pedestrian crossing at Joyce Street to increase safety for everyone in the area. The applicant hired Kittleson to study this, and ACHD has approved it. City parks and city staff and your recommended conditions of approval coming to you, provided that the project should mitigate with 176 caliper inches of tree mitigation as Celine described. And Parks has recommended that that be located at the 3 closer city parks. We are open to any location. Council President Clegg asked if that could also go in private locations. We're happy to place the offsite trees wherever the city would like. Also, the applicant is willing to increase that tree mitigation number from 176 total to a 250 caliper inches, as we understand that is an important issue to the city. Also, as requested in the last application, we've added new exterior access units designed to appeal to non-students such as BSU employees or young workers that want to be near downtown. They each have individual sidewalks to their entrances, really activating the streetscape. You can see this illustrated in this elevation here. We've also added this large public plaza at the corner. You can see the concepts for seating, really designed to make this an active indoor-outdoor space. We've also redesigned the sidewalks. Oh, it seems to just be advancing on its own here. We've redesigned the sidewalks to match the frontage and to have the, excuse me a moment because my PowerPoint is just advancing. See if that stopped it. I don't know why it's doing that.
Well, we're pausing you for a minute while you fix this.
Thank you.
I mean, we can see you, but we're pausing your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I think, oh, I don't know what setting it suddenly is advancing on its own. Well, I will proceed. Maybe somebody could come help me pause the screen so it doesn't advance. Maybe that did it. Okay. My apologies. Thank you for the accommodation. So went through the project overview here. To allow this project, as Celine described, we're seeking RO zoning, which has already been decided by the city that this that the mixed use designation in your comprehensive plan is compatible with RO zoning. But the inquiry here really is about what conditions are at this particular site and the surrounding zoning and development patterns that may warrant limitations on the new zone. So, and that's what's been recommended in the form of conditions of approval in the development agreement from your planning staff and from the Planning Commission. And we agree with those conditions, and we think that those limitations that have been imposed on this zone appropriately mitigate the impacts of this zone in this location. And really, we find that when we look at your comprehensive plan and the surrounding uses, that this is really an ideal project for this location. And there's several things I want to show you about why. First is just the location being next to BSU, or just immediately adjacent. That creates that walkability that the Council President Clegg was just talking about. For what makes it attractive for students who don't have cars? Well, being immediately adjacent to campus is important. We're a half mile to the Green Belt, a half mile to Albertsons, 1 mile to the Boise downtown. We've got great bike and pedestrian connectivity. We're at the corner of a signalized intersection. There's sidewalks and bike lanes on both sides, and we're constructing the new off-site pedestrian crossing. We have transit immediately available at our site. We're at the intersection of 2 arterial roadways, and we're just a few blocks. My auto advancing presentation. We're just a few blocks. Will you please come see if you can pause it? Just. I'll just keep talking. Okay, I'll continue on this slide. We're just a few blocks from the BSU shuttle that circulates all the way through the campus and to the downtown. Looking to your comprehensive plan, we'll try to get to these slides in a moment. In addition to being this mixed use area, this intersection of Boise and Protest is designated as a neighborhood activity center, which supports, quote, small scale retail, unquote, and higher density residential within a quarter-mile radius.
I'm gonna pause you, Deb. We can't hear you. If you'll go under slideshow, there should be a place where you could hit manual. And we just couldn't hear you as you scooted over, so your partner can work with you. Yeah, it's weird. Oh, Jimmy says it's the use timings button.
Where's that?
Use
If
timing.
you unclick use timings.
Oh, click that one, I see it. Okay,
So we should be good?
okay, let's try that.
Well, I mean, we're just guessing here. We'll see if that works.
Yeah, we'll try that, thank you. Again,
Usually we provide Zoom help. I don't know that we've provided PowerPoint help. This is great.
this is a first in the
All right, we will, when you are ready, take your time. When you are ready, we'll unpause and you can get going again.
Okay, ready to jump in. We're looking at your comprehensive.
Deb,
plan.
you're really sounding like you're in a fishbowl far away. I'm not sure why.
Is this better if I'm really
Yeah.
close?
When you scoot away, it's hard to hear you again.
Okay, I'll speak up too. Thanks for letting me know that. So looking at your comprehensive plan, I guess just to get us focused back on where I'm trying to go with this, we looked at all of the policies in your comprehensive plan to see how it supports the level of intensity and the level of development that we're providing here as conditioned. And when you look at the comprehensive plan with the neighborhood activity center being right at this location that supports small scale retail and higher density residential within a quarter-mile radius. The project report points out that the density range of this neighborhood activity center is 8 to 16 units per acre, and the current density is only 5.7. This project is going to add that small scale retail use and bring the NAC up to a 7.1 density closer to that range that's looking for. Blueprint Boise also suggests that higher density residential uses be concentrated at the center of that activity center and within a quarter-mile of transit. Consistent with that, we are at the heart of the NAC core and directly in front of transit. Higher densities also support transit, which is why your blueprint goal CC9 states that transit supportive development patterns are particularly important along transit corridors and within mixed use activity centers where higher densities can be accommodated. The project design incorporates other blueprint principles, including by providing improved access to transit facilities, improvements to pedestrian facilities, by bringing the buildings close to the street, by providing underground parking, by providing outdoor gathering spaces. The project as conditioned in the DA is also compatible with surrounding zoning. This site is between commercial zoning on our east and R2 to our west, so we provide that nice transition between them. On the other three corners are the BSU campus and the U district, another RO district, and R3. The R1C borders on the south, but that's 40 to 50 feet above the site, and our building is set back 70 feet. The project as conditioned is also compatible with surrounding development. The building height's capped at 3 stories, which is compatible with the 2 to 3 stories and the 4 to 5 stories that surround us. Other conditions of approval mitigate our impacts. We provide 274 parking spaces, which is 15 more than required. We have 550 bike spaces, which is 347 more than is required. 496 of them are in the secure garage, and we provide a bike repair station. This project is going to include all the smart transportation alternatives such as car share and bike share, scooter charging hubs on site. And so for all of these reasons, this is why RO is appropriate, both from surrounding zoning, surrounding development, and in your comprehensive plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brant Stiles.
Thank you very much. Brant Stiles, Collegiate Development Group, 3000 Locust, St. Louis, Missouri. Can you update me and let me know what time we have left?
I'm sorry, I had to go speak with the clerk for a second. I missed that question.
Oh, just curious on the amount of time we have left, just with the numbers.
It was, when you asked me that question, it was probably 4:30. It's 4 now. We'll add 30 seconds. The clerk had to step out with a family call.
Right. Thank you very much. Just a quick overview on the company. Collegiate Development Group, we're a small development company that builds housing for students and young professionals across the country. We couldn't be more excited about the activity in Boise and our involvement in it. We have our first project currently under construction off of Myrtle. And, to be honest, we're as excited, if not more excited, about the opportunity at Boise and Protest. Now, throughout this process, we've communicated that we pride ourselves on being a good community developer. And, we've worked really hard to listen and incorporate the input we've heard from the city staff, our neighbors, CENA, and the existing tenants. And the current development, to be honest, is better today than when we originally proposed it. A couple things I really want to highlight. A lot of, Celine's done a great job and Deb did a great job identifying some of the changes and what the proposal is. But some things that I really want to hit, well, first off is we're going to be relocating tenants that consider this property and these units home, and we understand the sensitivity around that. And we've worked with these tenants to develop a tenant assistance package to help lessen the burden of them finding a new apartment. The tenants recently reached out to us after our proposal and asked for some additional items, and we've agreed to all of those items. Just to give you a quick overview, we're providing them 6-month notice and continued communication during that process, providing a professional management company to provide relocation support. Moving funds, we're providing $4,000 for our 1-bedroom units and $5,500 for our 2-bedroom units. And those funds are really being taken into consideration for moving costs and increase in rental amount that a new apartment unit would cost. And one of the additional recent requests was some additional funds if any of the current tenants have to relocate more than 5 miles, or it takes over 6 months for them to find a place, something that we were happy to offer. And then lastly is our affordable option to return into our new project. We're allowing all of the existing tenants to move into our new project at a discounted rental rate for 3 years. And at the end of the day, this tenant assistance package with the moving funds and the affordable option to return gives the current tenants the opportunity to maintain their current rent levels for a total of 5 years, which we think is very meaningful. In addition to the relocation package, we are going to be adding, having the affordable housing units in our project. And even if some of the existing tenants don't return into our project, we'll be making 10 units available at HUD-approved rates to income-restricted applicants for 3 years. As the city has developed their own, affordable housing program, we've committed to apply for that program as well for those 10 units. And what that would actually do is increase the 3-year affordable housing units to a 15-year commitment. And we're hoping that we can be approved for those for that plan as well. Celine and Deb did a great job of identifying some of the major changes that we've made, specifically around adding some neighborhood retail. And we think the retail location that we have right at Boise and Protest is ideal for coffee shops, yoga studio, salon, wine bar, something that can be a really good community benefit. And then secondly, one of the items that was of concern in the last council was, the diversity of our units. And one of the things that we've done, I think, does 2 things. We've added some 2-bedroom units to the project, some more 2-bedroom units, and all on the ground floor. And all of those units have ground floor access. And we think that just helps increase the pedestrian friendliness and diversity of the unit mix. I want to rush through a couple of things.
Yeah, you've got about 30 seconds left.
All right. Well, one of the items that was identified in the last council meeting was the overall unit mix. And one thing I just want to talk about is our project, anyone that qualifies can live in our project. We have a mix of unit types. If this was just a student housing project, we would really focus on 4 and 5 bedroom units. That provides the highest return on our investment. But our project right here has 42% small format units. What I mean by small format units is studios 1s and 2s. We think this is a great opportunity for young professionals, professors, graduate students to live in our project. So this is not just a student housing project. It is a great student housing location because it's adjacency to Boise State, but because of our unit mix, it really allows for a diverse population. So a couple other things that I wasn't able to identify and talk through that I think we can talk through on the rebuttal side, specifically around the marketing on the parking. But I just want to thank everybody for their time. We're very excited about this project and would appreciate your support tonight.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I have some questions. I can wait till after the neighborhood association if needed, or I can ask them now.
What do you think best? That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, I'd go ahead because then you might have heard the council president say then the neighborhood association could comment on them. if
Oh,
they want to.
perfect. Thank you. So couple of questions here. One, I was very excited to hear that ACHD earlier today approved the Joyce Street crossing. That's something that has certainly been needed for a long time. One of the questions that was brought up at the last time that we talked was about a pedestrian bicycle study. And it looks like that you had asked also for a bike lane across the street. I guess I'm wondering if there's been any additional movement on a more thorough pedestrian and bicycle study, and sort of what the status is on that.
So we attempted to work with ACHD to have to install a protective bike lane, but that request was denied. By adding, we did our own pedestrian study and I listened to the concerns from Boise State as it relates to pedestrian crossing at Boise Ave. And that pedestrian one, there is a crosswalk at Boise and Protest. And just looking at pedestrian activity, that because the sidewalk does end at Joyce, we thought it would definitely improve the safety of the pedestrian activity if we had that crosswalk at Joyce. So that's what we've added. But there are dedicated bike lanes. Our hope was that we could do a protected bike lane, but that wasn't allowed. So outside of that, we haven't done a formal pedestrian study, but are confident that the approach that we've taken, definitely improves the current state of pedestrian activity where it is right now today.
Madam Mayor, a couple follow-up questions specifically about that. In those conversations with ACHD, did you learn anything about when there may be scheduled to be updates or improvements at that particular intersection? Was that conversation had? And I guess the reason why is that with the increased pedestrian activity, I'm not super familiar with that intersection as far as the last time it was updated and what types of additional infrastructure is planned there or currently exists.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, I could answer maybe a portion of what you're asking for, just to share with you that ACHD did comment when they transmitted their report today that they would consider requests from the city for their next integrated 5-year work plan for the improvements that we had requested that they didn't allow, particularly in particular the protected bike lane. So that may not be as much as you were looking for there, but that is, I think, the extent of the information we heard from ACHD on how much more they would consider that. So it sounds like they are open to that request from the city.
Madam Mayor, Deborah, thank you. That is helpful. And then I've just got one more question that I'm going to hand it over for a little bit unless.
I think Celine's got something on that too.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, I just want to mention, I believe Ryan Head is on Zoom tonight. At least he said he would be there he is. So if you had any ACHD specific questions, he might be able to answer them.
And I'd actually give Ryan the opportunity now if you want to say anything in addition to what the applicant just said on this topic.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Councilmember Halliburton, the answer to that question, our concern was not with the use of protected bike lanes, it's with the scope of them. Our recommendation would be a more comprehensive project implementing them all at once. And so our recommendation was that the city could include them in a future integrated 5-year work plan request, and that could be looked at as an independent project to make that improvement.
And then, Madam Mayor, I guess just for some clarity, so at this point, that intersection isn't included in the current 5-year work plan. Am I understanding that correctly?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that is correct.
Perfect. I'll hold off for a couple more.
All right, Ryan, do you have more? No? Okay. Additional questions for the applicant? Council President, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have a couple of questions. Deb, you mentioned that the applicant is willing to increase the tree mitigation. And I wonder if you had any discussions about that, and staff may also want to comment. If we're going to do that, I'd like to include it in the conditions, but I don't know how to describe what that would be if we go ahead with this project tonight.
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, no, we surprised staff with that one, but we're happy to help craft that condition. I think Saileen's current conditions included something about 176 total caliper inches on and off site. And through a combination of on-site and off-site, and the off-site has to be within 2 miles in a city park. So I would suggest you just change the number from 176 to 250 per the applicant's suggestion and agreement, if that works for you. We're also open, as I mentioned, to change the location if, in addition to within the 3 city parks that Parks has identified for some of those extra mitigation items, if you have a different location you'd like to direct that, of course, the applicant is open to any location.
Thank you. This question, I don't know if it's for you or someone else. Wonder how this development would be marketed to prospective students in terms of location and transportation needs, and will you market the alternatives that are available?
Absolutely. Councilmember Clegg, from a marketing perspective, we have a national property management company that will be doing all of our marketing. And one of the things that when we're talking about and looking at parking, a lot of it has to do with our location and our adjacency to campus, and that's one of the biggest selling points. And I think if you provide 100% parking per bed, you're enabling people to bring their cars. We don't want that. We want to, what we've realized and what we've uncovered over 10 years of developing successful student housing projects is, depending on your location, what we like to do is we like to limit the amount of parking, charge a fee for parking, so we're not enabling everyone to bring a car, and then provide smart alternatives. And we definitely incorporate those smart alternatives in our marketing material, whether it's scooter charging hubs that we have, car share programs, and all of the other alternatives, bike share, bike parking. It's just, from our perspective, it's smart development and it's smart growth. And I think the younger generations really appreciate that higher level of sustainability. And because of our adjacency to campus, we really communicate that you don't need a car. These are the smart alternatives that we have for you. But some people will need a car. Some people have jobs that while they're working at school or whether they're working in their careers, that they need a car. So we do provide parking, and we've got about 50% of our residents being parked underground here. The others have the smart alternatives at their disposal.
Madam Mayor, follow up?
Yeah.
So I think you've answered my second part of the question, which is that you will be decoupling the rent from the parking cost. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And would you be willing to accept that as a condition that is how you'll handle that.
Absolutely.
Thank
Not
you.
a-
Thank you. Any other questions? Jimmy, did you have more?
Madam Mayor, I guess, I want to bring this up because I saw notes of it in the planning and zoning meeting, and that was just sort of a request to explore the space, the retail space that is down there on the bottom floor. And my understanding from the minutes, it shows 2,375 square foot retail space that might be able to be condensed into two different spaces, two different smaller businesses. And then there was also a conversation that existed around the possibility of having 4 retail spaces or, somewhere in between. And I guess I would love just to hear some of your thoughts on that. I don't know if that was something that was going to be a development killer for you as far as the ability to do those things, and if you could explain the possibility of that a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. It's something that we're open to. There's give and take. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about that we just didn't have enough time was to even propose a solution for that based on some of the conversations that were had during planning commission. What we've done, and as you can see here, we've studied the plan a little bit, and what we can do and what we're willing to do is we can add about 1,000 square feet to that 2,300, 2,400 to get up to about almost 3,500 square feet of additional of total retail. What that does to the program is it reduces our amenity square footage a little bit, which is something that we're open to, but it also eliminates one of the 2-bedroom units that is on the ground floor that has exterior walkout that we really feel like is definitely adds to the diversity of the units, and I think it would help with the diversity of the tenant base. But if adding retail is something that City Council would like to see, it's something that we are willing to accept as a condition.
Madam Mayor, follow up. So my understanding then is that additional square feet would mean you would lose 1 housing unit. Is that correct?
1 2-bedroom unit. 1 2-bedroom ground floor unit. Yes.
Great. And I think some of the, in our neighborhood associations, we'll touch on this later, is the ability to really use this as an activity center for the entire neighborhood and increase the possibilities for everybody to be able to use that. And I know that that's a concern. I also know that there are concerns about, is this the appropriate place for that type of commercial space? And with some of the other businesses struggling in the area, does it make sense? And I think that conversation can go either way. Sometimes in my mind, I think if there's a tipping point and you get enough businesses there, then all of a sudden you've got a hub and a hot spot, and it truly is that activity center. So I appreciate you giving some clarity and kind of exploring that space a little bit more.
And we want it to be a vibrant space as well. And adding more square footage, we're confident in the originally proposed that we can fill that up with quality local neighborhood businesses. Continuing to add on to that just decreases our confidence that we can maintain the level of vibrancy and activity on that corner. But at the end of the day, if it's a requirement, we'll figure it out and we'll make that a very vibrant corner.
Great, thank you. You good? All right, it looks like that's it for now, Brent. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have Sina. Is it Eric that's with us tonight? Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Eric Berg, 1301 South Grant Ave, representing Sina. Madam Mayor and council members, living in one of the first areas south of the river to be developed, dating all the way back to the 19th century, I'm constantly reminded how far-reaching the decisions that we make in development are. The success of our neighborhood centers often hinge on just a few projects, as their lifespans set the course for the next 50 to 100 years for that area. The council and commission rightly decided to deny a largely identical project to the current one for that reason. It didn't fit the rules and visions for the neighborhood and city, And when the city sees a situation that doesn't meet those standards of the code, it needs to stand firm when a new project does not address those deficiencies. The Southeast Neighborhood Association voted unanimously to deny this project based on the fact that it doesn't meet the standards of the code and has not addressed the reasons for its previous denial. In the letter from Planning and Development Services denying the project on October 14th, 2020, one of the major reasons was that the rezone request does not comply with the approval criteria. The letter rightly points out that RO is a zone utilized near dense commercial or dense residential areas, providing flexibility for transition zones. But none of that's really applicable in this case. This is primarily due to the R1 zoning and the R2 zoning surrounding this property. Putting RO next to R1 and R2 and not R3 or commercial zoning is really pretty unprecedented in the city. The RO simply doesn't fit the surrounding zones, while other zones do. The letter from the city also addressed the lack of mixed use in this project. And the project before you tonight does have retail space where previous one did not. However, the amount of retail space it has, at least on the original design when it was only about 2,400 square feet, is only 1.1% of the total floor space of the entire project. I'm glad they've decided that an alternative could be to increase it by about 1,000 square feet, but even quick math shows that would only increase it to less than 2%, about 1.7% of the total floor space of the project. That means that over 98% of it is residential and less than 2% is commercial. That hardly seems to qualify for the term mixed use, especially considered that this is a similar amount of square footage that would have been a lobby coffee shop in a previous proposal that was previously rejected. Commercial is desperately needed in this area. It's said that, some of the businesses are struggling, but Crickets has been a mainstay of our area and is often busy. The other side is a tobacco shop, which I've never visited because that's not something I do. And Big Judd's is a cornerstone of this neighborhood. So I kind of disagree with the premise that more commercial wouldn't really help this place develop. The project would in fact eliminate the commercial that exists in the former Maverick station and only replace it. Maverick stations of that era tend to be about 2,400 square feet, 2,500 square feet, which is similar to what they were originally proposing, which means that net, really no commercial or maybe 1,000 foot of commercial would be added onto this project, which is hardly really anything. It doesn't help our neighborhood in terms of a net gain. SENA supports mixed use developments and supports a healthy use of a mix of uses, especially activity centers. And this project just doesn't meet that. Another reason for the rejection of the previous project was the lack of diversity of housing types. The dominance of student-oriented housing, 4 to 5 bedroom dormitory style setup units, which is actually what I lived in college too, was a concern of many. Over the course of this project, if you look at the number of beds in the project, the design has largely remained dominated by this student-focused housing. The 4 designs that have been proposed had 20%, 30%, 27%, and 22% of the beds that are more traditional apartment arrangement, the rest being those 4 and 5 bedroom dormitory style. Not only has the applicant not addressed this concern, it may be true that by unit, the number of units has changed to be a little more non-student oriented, but we have to look at the number of beds. That's the number of actual people who live there. And it has not only not addressed that concern, the current proposal has only 22% of those beds in a non-dormitory arrangement. If they were to increase the residential and take away one of the walk-up apartments, that would be even less, a full 5% less than the previous proposal that you rejected for lack of diversity in housing types. The city was right to reject the project on this lack of diversity. And the applicant not only didn't address it, but made it worse. When it comes to the neighborhood activity center, this is likely our last chance to get this right. Identity that was recently built provides no commercial use, no mixed use, no public amenity. Eagle Point Apartments are not likely to be redeveloped at any time in the foreseeable future. And the only other corner is owned by Boise State, who understandably doesn't focus on mixed use in their development. This really is the last chance for us to get any mixed use or commercial along this corridor. Without a commitment to have mixed use in this development, the fate of the neighborhood activity center will likely be in name only and be Big Judd's, a coffee shop and a tobacco shop from now until who knows. The good news is because of the hard work of council, it doesn't have to be this way. This project is not the only thing that can be built here, and new tools such as the housing bonus ordinance that was recently passed, pedestrian commercial zoning, which has been used very creatively in the city, could be used to build a project that is a better asset to the city, the neighborhood, and the applicant. A variety of commercial spaces built underneath residential is a recipe that has worked in Boise for over a century. From Hyde Park to the buildings along Broadway to downtown, or even the newer Bound Crossing. In fact, there's a building that on Broadway, they're converting from a commercial to housing on top and commercial on bottom, which will be a great new neighbor to Sena. Sena would love to work with the applicant to figure out how to get an incredible variety of affordable housing, student housing, commercial, and traditional housing into this project in a form that works for everyone. I agree that if any redevelopment is going to happen here, it makes sense to be at a higher density. This is a great location, but we have to ask ourselves if this is the right answer, if the project before us is the right answer we want to live with for the next 50 to 100 years. And the answer last time was no, and we believe it should still be no. Finally, I just want to address that this sets a precedent for developers to really ignore both the will of City Council and the neighborhood. This project is nigh identical to the previous one rejected. Anyone who looked at it would be hard pressed to know the difference. The same claims by the city to why this should not be approved have not changed. The concerns of the neighbors have not changed. The surroundings of the neighborhood have not changed. This project has not changed in any significant way from what was previously rejected, and in some ways, in the diversity of housing, has actually gotten worse. We cannot as a city establish a precedent that if one does not get the decision it wants from City Council, the solution is to run the same project back and hope they have a change of mind. It's unfair to the city and the neighbors who then have to reorganize right back in the middle of a pandemic to fight a project that is really no different from what they just spent a year working on and giving their feedback to and having council listen to their feedback. The neighbors and residents have organized for a year around this project, got your decision, and then were forced to organize again. And that's okay, except it's the same project. This time, some folks had moved out due to the uncertainty of not knowing whether they'd be able to live there in the future, rents and life circumstances, along with the difficulty of organizing in a pandemic, exacerbated this ability to organize around this project. To approve the same project after rejecting only a year ago would set the precedent that developers should think of a no from council more as a comeback later. And that is not the way we need to do things. It didn't fit then, it didn't fit now. And we shouldn't allow anyone, whether it be neighborhoods or developers, to just try to get their way through exhaustion of their opponents or council. The city made the right decision in rejecting this previous project. And because the new project doesn't address the reasons for denial, we urge you to once again reject this one. And afterwards, we look forward to working with everyone, including the developer and the applicant, to get to a project that more fully fulfills the city standards. Thank you, and I open myself for questions.
Thank you, Eric. Are there questions for Eric?
Madam Mayor.
Let's go with Councilman Bajent and then the council president.
Thank you. Eric, thanks for your testimony, both this time and last time. It's helpful. One thing that I've always wondered about SENA in particular is what outreach or efforts on these big projects you do to engage the neighborhood before the board votes. In other words, do you poll? Do you have a mailing list? Do you reach out to people? Who are you hearing from before coming to a conclusion as to how to vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Benson. What we generally do is we attend all the neighborhood meetings. We also try to communicate with the neighbors. In this case, many of the neighbors were residents, obviously, since there's no one living in the Maverick station currently. We really try to communicate with anyone who's adjacent to the project. We try to bring people into our meetings. We've had multiple people who are either residents or neighbors, even some people from outside our neighborhood association, bring their feedback and information to us in our meetings to try and figure out what the neighborhood thinks. We try always to take our cues from the neighbors because we're representing them. And we certainly try to get as many people involved in that respect as possible.
Thank you. Is there any effort or any work to reach out to BSU students in particular who are certainly affected by this project and also part of the neighborhood?
Madam Mayor and Council Member, certainly we have. It's a little harder because of people tend to move more, but we do have on our board somebody who is a renter and who was a previous Boise State student. We have on our board someone who owns rental property for Boise State students in the area. My wife happens to be a Boise State student. We try to, it is harder in that regard. And we also do talk to Drew Alexander and people at Boise State to try and get more feedback as they have better connections with that community than we do.
Thank you. And thanks for being here too. I know it's a lot of work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Council President has some questions too.
Thank you. Good evening, Eric. Thanks for being here. So I have a question for you about the mixed use. It's always a bit of a struggle to understand how much mixed use is viable. And you mentioned that the Maverick that's been here for quite a while is about the same size as the mixed use that's being proposed. Recognizing that there will be a few more residents here, how much mixed use would you propose if it were you? And how would you, what evidence do you have that it would be supported to be viable?
Madam Mayor, Council President, I don't happen to have a market study per se. What I can say is there are places along Broadway that do tend to fill up. The old Oddfellows Lounge usually does. And if we see, there's the taco truck and the tobacco shop, I'm sure if they could do a brick and mortar place, they might be interested in such things. What I look at when I look at trying to find something in the realm of mixed use is I look to the standard we have in other parts of the city. So if we look at Bound Crossing, if we look at Hyde Park, if we look at the buildings along Broadway, it usually is that the entire frontage or darn near the entire frontage on the major road is some sort of retail, and then residential above and so forth. And so, if it obviously, if it were my project, I would probably look to trying to build some work and residence units, the combination we've seen that's worked in other places where your residence is above the commercial space that you're leasing. And I would kind of look to put those all along Boise Ave, and then maybe do some walk-up apartments along the backside where you can walk up to the nice open area up against the rim. That would be kind of what I would do if I were penciling it out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Madam Mayor. Question for Eric and maybe just some quick clarification from staff. My understanding that from the last proposal, the development has shrunk in height. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor.
Madam-
Councilmember
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Eric. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton. Yes, the proposal before with the last rezone request was a mix between 4 and 3 stories. And so with this request, it is only 3 stories.
Great, thank you. Oh, so Eric, I guess one, thanks for being here. It's always good to see you. You always show up strong, and I think we always ask you hard questions because of it. So appreciate you being here. So what I heard from you was that you wanted to see more retail commercial space on the bottom to kind of better activate that area in the neighborhood and kind of serve all folks. I also heard you say that you weren't against density and you thought that it was appropriate area for density. And so I guess my question for you is that, we did hear some concerns from neighbors about the height, probably more so up on Depot Bench than some of the folks down in the Vista Neighborhood Association. So the developer did make some changes there. Would you rather see more commercial space on the bottom if it meant that the development was going to get higher so that it could accommodate for more units and a larger diversity of units in that mixed space?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Halliburton, I think, I think the size of the project right now is a pretty good scale. It began as a 5. The first proposal we ever saw at Cena was 5 stories with 4-story parking garage. It's gotten quite a bit better in its massing since then. I don't know what the trade-off would be for height versus commercial. What I would say is that it seems to me that the pretty easy fix would be to not only, if you took, for example, some of the 4 and 5 bedroom units and traded it for commercial, you would help both the diversity of unit problem that came up last time and is even worse this time, and you would help the commercial issue as well. And I think that's a trade that would work out well and encourage the units to be used by everybody and have a greater diversity of people living there.
Cool, great, thanks, Eric.
Anyone else for Eric? Eric, it was great to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks a bunch.
All right, we are going to take there are no other neighborhood associations. So now we're going to go into the public hearing or the public portion of this. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then be back. And then after that, we'll take a break every hour and a half or so. We saw a message, was it Jim Prickett, Mr. Prickett, Mr.?
That's me, Jim Pickett. Yep.
Hi, Jim. We saw your message and I saw that you're part of the Depot Bench Neighborhood Association. Typically, our code would allow for another neighborhood association to finish the time used by the Neighborhood Association of Record. That's 4.5 minutes. If that's not enough, I'm happy to bump it up to 10.
I won't, after, I'm not gonna be near as elegant or as fact-filled as Eric. So I can take the last 4 minutes of Eric's time.
Okay, great.
And plus you've heard from us 3 times already on this. So I think that, I'm just gonna highlight maybe a couple things that Eric didn't. And if that's okay.
Oh, of course.
May I go? May I go?
Yeah,
All right.
Timer when you start.
All right,
Oh,
Madam Mayor.
I wanted to let everybody know tonight, you don't have to read your address into the record if you don't want to, and the clerk can get it from you. We're trying not to live broadcast people's addresses if people don't want them live broadcast on the live stream or the replay after. So just anybody that's listening in, it's by habit. People still keep doing it, but you don't have to if you don't want to. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Jim Pickett. I'm a longtime member of the Depot Bench Neighborhood Association. I live at 3501 Windsor Drive, Boise, Idaho. It's already out in the record a whole bunch of places. Madam Mayor and council members. As we've written 3 times to both planning and zoning and to city council, we do appreciate the changes that the applicant has made to their design, especially with regard to height. That is a vast improvement. However, we still feel that this is a massive project for that corner and doesn't transition very well to the area, to the surrounding areas. Additionally, as with my colleague Eric mentioned, 2,000 or I think 2,600 square feet of retail space doesn't really seem like mixed use or neighborhood activity center to us. We appreciate the comment this evening to up that to potentially by 50% of the current use to 3,500. I don't think that losing 1 bedroom unit is catastrophic given the number of bedroom units that they are proposing. Mostly, I'm going to add that it's a real shame that we're going to lose some affordable housing. And while the applicant has made numerous concessions to make that happen, I really just can't see the current neighbors moving back into this place. There is walk-in level, but I just can't see that the type of housing that the people in the current residents have and enjoy, where they can go outside and be part of their own community, is going to be replaced by what is proposed here. I do also think that after 3 years' time, which was in the application until I saw this evening, these units are going to be lost forever. These affordable units are going to be lost forever. And so, the housing crisis in Boise is not going to magically disappear at the end of that time. I think, like I said, the scale of the project is relatively unchanged. It's still a massive block that will face Boise Avenue. It's a solid structure. They've done some setbacks, but if you stand on that corner, that's a huge building that's going to show itself to everyone on that corner. One thing, as Eric said, the developer has a project and they want that project, and they've gone through with basically an unchanged project. They've made some concessions. The bus stop's nice. I looked at the bus route. There's no place that bus goes. The bus stop at that corner you have to walk to either get to a downtown bus stop. That bus goes to the mall. That's the only place it goes. So that bus stop is nice, but the bus doesn't use it currently. So just throwing that out there. But the developer had a plan and they've moved through that plan and they've not reached out to our neighborhood association. I don't know if they've reached out to Eric's neighborhood association. So, you know, here we are a year later, they've made changes. They've reached out to council, but they haven't reached out to the people that are affected. And that's really kind of sad. So again, we request that council deny this request for the same reasons that they denied previous iterations of this project. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jim. And you were plenty elegant and eloquent.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jim? All right, thanks so much for joining us. It was good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now we're going to move into the folks that have signed up first, and then anybody that's raised their hands, and I'll get you in the middle. That sound good? So first off, get to my list. We have Leanne Chafee. Leanne, I'm so sorry. I knew that.
Good evening. It is Leanne Chafee. Hi. For the record, I am Leanne Chafee, and we begin, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I too feel like this is a project that is maybe a good project. It's in the wrong place. And I am really sad that it will displace the long-term affordable housing. During this battle, we've become friends. It's been really interesting to be able to get to know neighbors that were over the hill, but we didn't know that. I'm glad to hear that there's some more changes in the financial packet and help. I don't think there was enough actual assistance to get people relocated. I know that at least one or two are looking at probably having to change their employment and maybe even the city they live in. And that's hard. And I don't really think that you're going to find a 90-year-old grandma type wanting to live in CDG's project. It just doesn't fit. And some of the people that are there. I'm really concerned because to me, this project as it goes in absolutely eliminates any possibility of a real neighborhood a neighborhood activity center like we've seen at Hyde Park. No, we don't want it to be 4 stories high. No way. 3 is massive and big, and no, we don't want that to happen. I think the project just is in the wrong spot. It super saturates that intersection with people and with bikes and with more cars, and everything that is around it has some kind of residential zone. I'm concerned about the safety factors. They said there was a 9% estimated increase in traffic because of the cars from the CDG project. And so at 9%, they don't have to have a traffic study, but at 10%, they would have to. So it's really getting close. I agree about the transit bus system. Boise doesn't really do that. I'm concerned about pedestrians that are going across the Beacon and Protest and Boise Avenue. I jaywalk, I know, but if you have, with the number of students, I figure you'd have at least 2,000 crossings a day. And if you think that everybody's gonna head down to the lights, no matter where, they won't. I just was able to see the ACD-HD project, and they were talking about Riverside Edge project, and that they still had 15% of their people were parking cars on the street. There is no place to park them. I'm sad that this was brought up again so quickly. Yes, we're tired. And I just have a question. What constitutes a change that would give a whole new project number and a whole new refresh start date? Thank you.
Good, thank you. I expect that we'll be able to get to that question in some of the council member statements.
Thank you.
So we'll remember that. Bart, it looks like you're right there too. You're up next.
Okay, now we're going to try to do a combo here. So I'm going to try and get him on. He's going to read from, and then I'll try to show you a few slides. So I will flop to the next thing.
Game, if he
Yes.
is Bart using a different computer?
He is to read his stuff. Our printer went down, so he doesn't have a paper.
Fine. I just ask that one of them be muted so that we don't end up with echoes.
Okay.
I'm not on the.
He's not on the Zoom meeting.
Perfect. That's
Is that okay?
perfect.
Okay.
Okay, my name is Bart Chafee, a long-term resident of Boise, Idaho, and I'm opposed to the proposed development for a number of reasons, three of which I'll go through. The first, Jim Pickett just dealt with, and I agree with him, that it's a real shame to remove the low-income housing from individuals that individuals can afford, and think it's unacceptable, a disappointment. The offer to supply some to live in new housing at a reduced rate sounds good, but it's probably not appealing to the displaced residents when the age difference, lifestyle, and economic status of the individuals is so different. Secondly,
Okay, this is where we're going to share a screen if I can get this figured out, you folks.
We'll pause you while you're trying to figure that out.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. I'm going to.
can carts put in the path on Tri-Stay. And the third thing is I believe the property under consideration has significant value that is irreplaceable to the Boise Valley. The decision reached regarding this property will be a testament to what the city council believes is important to the valley. For example, the history of the area, it says in 1864, the Mills Ditch was dug, which allowed some of the desert land to be irrigated. During the same period of time, electrical power for the valley was generated here. In 1865, a flour mill was built that met the needs of Boise Valley residents. In 1868, a distillery was built on the property that satisfied their refreshment for the citizens. During this period, a flotation system was created for the transportation of logs and lumbers to the sawmill. In addition, part of the Oregon Trail that served as a highway to the valley for those settling here went through this property. The improvement of the irrigation system for the college improved the water needs of the valley, which was a combination of the university and as well as its property owners. Will this site be developed to house some students, or will the irreplaceable historic value of this property be preserved for the people to enjoy for years to come? The mature tree canopy throughout this property, the beauty of the area with grass, the flowing water and ponds, along with the numerous wildlife living on the property, are valuable assets to this community.
Bart.
I strongly agree with John Bertram's proposal for this site.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we were able to see the pictures, Leanne. Thank you.
Good. Oh, good.
That
So,
worked.
yeah, they're just, the one that made me laugh was the car that's parked in the bike lane right next to the sign that says, "No parking, bike lane."
We see that all too often.
No kidding.
Thank you both. Really good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening.
Good to see you both.
Next up, we have Tammy McMillan. And then after that, Pam, is it Raymer? Romer. And Celine, you'll have her slides. Great.
Madam Mayor, Tammy is on.
Great. Hi,
Line.
Tammy. We can see you. Oh, we can't hear you, though. Still can't hear you. Oh, did we lose her?
Well, it looks like we lost her.
Tammy, well, we can see you again. Can't hear you. you want to try to troubleshoot with Tammy and we'll.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, she appears to be unmuted on my
I know,
end.
that's the thing is it looks like she's on, Tammy, it looks like you're unmuted, so I think it's the audio source that you've probably got to play with. Yeah, I'm going to ask if you could help. I don't know if you're able to communicate with her, maybe do some.
I'm wondering if the best approach is to have her log off and try and log back in with the link and try that first.
Tammy, were you able to hear that? Okay, yeah, so go ahead and log off and try logging back in. We're going to have Pam speak and then you'll be up next when you're back in. Great, thanks. Pam, if we can still see you, Tammy. And then Pam, if you're there, Celine is going to share your slides.
I'm here. Thank you. Hi, Celine. Thank you for your assistance.
Hi there, just a second. Celine. What's happening? Oh, we need Matt in the tech room to share the screen. Great. All right, now we can see those now, Pam. So go ahead.
Oh, good. So you can see them. All right, thank you. All right, go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Celine. Good evening. My name is Pam Romer. I'm a resident at Reidenbaugh Place Apartments that will be displaced. I am still opposed to the rezone at 1909 and 2001 West Boise Avenue. Isn't this beautiful? The silver maple alone is worth $97,400. Next. This same project, as proposed about 6 months ago, will still destroy open space and a mature tree canopy. The new plan is still the same massive, overwhelming monoculture project, still renting by the bedroom and promoting use for students and BSU faculty and grad students. Next, the number of units have decreased, but the bedroom count has increased by 10, now 547 bedrooms. The next 3 slides will show the previous September plans on the left and the current plans on the right. Next. 6 front-facing 2-bedroom units have been added. Retail space that is not much bigger than Big Judd's has been included. Possible 2 shops, turning a tenant coffee bar into a public coffee shop, and don't know something else. 1 courtyard has been narrowed. The number of 4 and 5-bedroom units have increased, and the number of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units have decreased. Next. The plans for the 2nd and 3rd floor are not much different, just additional bedrooms recombined to allow for a higher bedroom count per unit and a lower unit count. Next, there is no adaptability in the plans as recommended by the mayor in last year's City Council September hearing. Same safety issues as discussed in last year's hearing, still waiting to hear about BSU's master plan and how they will address their housing responsibilities. Next, Protest Boise Avenue is a designated neighborhood activity center. The community would like to see a vibrant mixed use that would be as wonderful or more so than Bowen Crossing. We have a dream. Several neighbors have shared their vision of what our neighborhood activity center could look like. Next, this activity center is not a regional use. It is a neighborhood activity center. There are no housing choices, no mix of types or price ranges in the project. A mix of the number of rentable bedrooms in a unit is not a mixed use. Our neighborhood activity center will become a student housing density center. Next, according to the Oregon Trail Parkway Plan introduction, this plan provides a means of protecting Boise Avenue and surrounding neighborhoods as historical resources and enhancing the cultural and aesthetic values of the street. Next, some of the wildlife that calls our community home: blue herons, ducks, deer, turkeys, coyotes, varmints. We even have an owl that lives down below. Next, the courtyard at Reidenbaugh Place Apartments, a great place to relax from the world, to gather for family and community functions, to share barbecues, have concerts, to play croquet, etc. Please deny the rezone and let's build housing affordable for all incomes that will fit. Thank you.
Pam, thank you very much.
Thank you, Celine.
Yes, thanks, Celine. That worked well. And it looks
She's
like
great.
Tammy is back. We can see you. And now it looks like you are actually muted from a mute button perspective. So go ahead and try unmuting and let's see if that works.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. So my perspective of this We just had an incident. I live at 2001 West Boise Avenue, apartment 4 at the Raw Baja Apartments. I do face Boise Avenue Street. I do see several cars that go by very fast over the speed limit. Not very much patrol of officers that go by. Also, we just had an incident, not probably two and a half blocks away from somebody that just lost their life. It's going to increase more crime in the area. Also, those scooters, they're parked right in front of my door, out my front door on the sidewalk. Several times my husband has asked for kids that walk by and knock him down to please be considerate and pick him back up. And they just look at him and laugh. This is not going to be considerable. I really am against this. I don't think it'd be good in this community. My husband's a veteran, disability, on Social Security. We got a short living income. I've had to pick up a second job right now. And I don't know where we're going to really go, to even be able for me to even travel to work. I work at Fred Meyer's right up here on the hill at Federal Way. I pick up extra shifts whenever I can. And limited income, I just don't understand how this is going to work. Just like when school started back up a month, 2 months ago, right when they did the rezone hearing down here on Joyce, there was a school bus stopped there. It was still dark in the morning with their lights on, and they have their stop sign out for the oncoming traffic, and the cars were still going right through. I was like, seriously? That crosswalk is not going to make a difference if it's there or not. It's not doing it now. I just don't understand where this is going to be a good location for this building. And residential, there's too much apartments. There's no retail into this. And Maverick shut down because they weren't getting business. What's going to make them get business? Putting a coffee shop or something? They ain't going to get much coffee shop. People are not going to want to stop right there on that corner. That's about all I have to say.
Tammy, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too, guys.
It looks like, is Jenny up next? I can see Jenny.
Hi.
Might as well.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Jenny? Yes.
Okay, great. Hi there. Good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you. Thank you so much. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you and see you just fine.
Okay, perfect. My name is Jenny Like, and I live in the Mesa Vista neighborhood that sits directly above the proposed development site. I encourage you as the city council members to really look at the scope of this projected proposal by CDG and ask whether or not it fits in with the surrounding neighborhood and whether or not it can be called a neighborhood activity center, because I believe the answer to both of these questions is no. If this mammoth dormitory housing 541 residents is approved, we will have student housing developments on all four corners of Beacon Avenue and Boise Avenue. Is this what we really want for our city? Overdeveloped student housing sites? I think there's no debate here that Boise needs housing, but are we willing to sacrifice good quality housing developments to push through massive student dormitories that will not benefit the surrounding neighborhoods? The City Council has the ability to deny this project, as it has done once before, and take the time for other options to be brought to the table. A student housing dormitory with a 2,300 square foot coffee shop is by no means a Boise neighborhood activity center. You only have to look at the Boise City website to see what they term a neighborhood activity center. Destinations that serve one or more neighborhoods, they are typically characterized by a compact scale and pedestrian-friendly design that encourages pedestrian access from adjacent neighborhoods. Examples include Bound Crossing, Hyde Park, 36th Street, and Hill Road. What CDG is proposing does not fall under the description of a Boise neighborhood activity center. It in no way resembles Bound Crossing, Hyde Park, nor 36th and Hill. I know the site size is smaller than the neighborhood activity centers noted, but I do believe a meaningful neighborhood activity center on a smaller scale is possible for this parcel of land. We could do this right as a city and develop this corner into a true neighborhood activity center, something that the city and the surrounding neighborhoods will be proud of. Or we can allow a massive student dormitory that is out of scope and will be a seriously inappropriate fit for the neighborhood to be pushed through. What if you decided as a council to encourage developers to go back to the drawing board and bring to the table designs that will benefit all citizens of Boise, students, our low-income neighbors, our young professionals, and our families, a space with a mixed use of housing, retail, pedestrian-friendly areas, and more. I encourage you to deny this project again and give developers the chance to bring fresh ideas to the table that will benefit all citizens and all neighbors. Let's turn the corner of Beacon Avenue and Boise Avenue into a development that we can all enjoy and be proud of for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Clerk will let us know who's next.
Madam Mayor, we have Ryan Small.
Hi there. Is it Ryan Small?
Ryan Small, yes.
Hi, Ryan, you're up. And John, you can go ahead and be next after Ryan. I'm sorry, I forgot to head to you after the signups. Ryan, are you there?
Madam Mayor, I show that his camera is.
Hello.
For years to come.
Hi, this is Ryan.
Thank you, Jenny.
Hi, Ryan. We've got.
I'm so sorry. I'm following you on YouTube, and I think I'm actually a couple seconds behind you guys.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to ask if you can, if it's possible, because we can hear the YouTube in your background. And so like I could hear Jenny talking and you were saying hello. So if it's possible for you to mute that.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and mute that right now.
Okay, it'll be easier for us to hear you.
Okay, no problem.
And yes, there's a bit of a lag between real time and YouTube.
I apologize. So
No, not at all. Go ahead.
if you're ready,
Yes,
I'm here to talk.
we are ready.
Okay, so my statement here on this is my name is Ryan. I live in apartment 7 of 2001 West Boise Avenue. And I do appreciate your guys' time to allow me to go ahead and talk about the issues that we have here for this development. Now, I'm under the impression that normally people can go ahead and do whatever they want with their property. The problem is that what they're trying to do here will cause problems with other people's property. Right now in our neighborhood, we've had a couple different people move out of our neighborhood due to the stress of not knowing what the stability of our housing is. Now, right now, the center area that is our little thing in the middle is packed up with cars because everybody that moves here has a vehicle. So this idea that we're going to get a whole bunch of population here, that none of these people use cars or anything else, is absolutely absurd. The other idea is if you look at their plans that they have, where they have a bike area at the back of the building that they plan to build, they're going into a little area next door that happens to be actually a private road. I don't know if they've actually worked out something with the neighbors. I just severely doubt it. So yes, I've actually seen different issues here. I don't think that this is a good idea for the location that they're looking for. I'm personally, I would like to see more development here in Boise. This area just isn't for it. And that's basically my statement.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
It was good to hear from you. Thanks for calling in. Oh, it's not on. Oh, wait, it shows green. Matt, is it Matt that's in the tech room?
Correct.
Does he need to turn it on? Oh, it should be good now. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Can I take this off for a minute?
Yeah.
Testing. Perfect. Okay. Madam Mayor, council members, John Bertram, 1 West Parkview Place on the bench. I hope you had the opportunity to review my Strong Towns article, From Our House to God's Suite. It was very informative. I had a dream of fulfilling the vision of the Boise Avenue, Protest Road, and Beacon Street Neighborhood Activity Center. In my imagination, the Boise City Council paused and voted down the Boise Avenue Student Housing Project for the third time. The city realized that piecemeal development would not achieve the goals of an NNC and encouraged neighborhood residents, the two neighborhood associations, business and property owners, city staff, and BSU to vision a concept plan by working together. That transformative plan opened the door to an incredible outpouring of support and action. The plan, built on the cultural history of the site, is named the Mill District after the wood construction, flowing water, and ponds that existed in the 1860s and 1870s. The new thriving Mill District now compares with Hyde Park and Bound Crossing as an enterprising and attractive NAC. The first breakthrough in my dream was when a regional nonprofit housing foundation acquired the Reidenbaugh Place apartments and upgraded the 24 units in Central Courtyard into a Guy Suisse senior living model. It also refurbished the canal, creating a small park and walkway. The next opportunity was the new ownership of the former Maverick and Big Judd site, which resulted in a 3-story mixed-use building with underground parking. Big Judd's returned, as well as new retail office space, including an office for Cena. Named the Canal Apartments, it decks look out with a view on the canal and hillside of native plantings to the south, with the Mill District's attractive streetscape and landscaping and public art to the north. Another key component was the enhancement in the neighborhood of 2 bus stops on Protest Avenue and Boise Avenue, Protest Road and Boise Avenue, with a raised platform, covered seating, and an electronic schedule board. BSU rebounded to develop a 3-story student housing, mixed-use housing project with underground parking on the former surface lot of the Manor apartment. The NAC has now become so successful that the Mill District became a BSU success story where many meet prior to and after BSU activities. On the corner of the Tobacco Connection, Maverick has returned as an enlarged bodega concept along with gas, air, and electric charging stations. The Identity Building has redesigned its first floor, expanding the Mill District's commercial offerings to provide a salon and bike repair shop. Now the Eagle Point Apartments are considered replacing surface parking beyond the bodega and underground parking in another mixed-use building. What a success story the Mill District is, thanks to the mayor and city council pausing in 2021 and encouraging all parties to prepare a concept plan and work together on this successful mixed-use NAC. Now people stroll the shops, landscape streets, and gardens of the Mill District, enjoying the positive impacts of nature, living, exercise, socializing, and well-being. Hopefully you can make this dream a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, John. I got both of your letters. I appreciate you sending those my way. I'm glad that I came in this morning so that I could read both of those. I wasn't excited to hear about that competing bike shop a couple blocks from BVP, but that's all right. I know that you've lived in your space for a while, right up above, and I'm wondering if you know the Bub Canal that's below, if in your time that you've been at that space, if that's been exposed, or was it tiled or covered at some point while you've been there?
The Bub Canal, it's called Drain D. It's been unfortunate that it's been called a drain. Seasonally, it gets a lot more water in the spring, summer months. It slows down in the winter. But that is what I'm starting to call the Ann Morrison Canal, because that goes under Capitol Boulevard and then flows through into that kind of wildland area over in Ann Morrison Park into the Boise River. So it is a continually moving stream, especially in the spring, summer, fall months.
And John, has it been behind Big Judd's there and some of the other stuff? Has it been daylighted before in the past, or has it always been covered as far as you're
right by so I went back and looked at the apartments on the other side of Protest. It's open on that side, but it goes underground under Protest Road and then goes under where Big Judd's is. But then it reappears right at the border there when the Reidenbaugh Place Apartments and meanders through there and then goes through Wild Duck and goes on and then crosses over under Boise Avenue. So it's a piece of that's one of the primary reasons that I'm opposed to this current project is that we're giving up the wildlife. Just last week, I had like 9 deer in the yard, get all sorts of wildlife on the bench. I wrote you an article earlier about the need to do a plan and protect our bench rims and slopes. There's some terrific topography there, terrific sites for enjoyment. So I just hate to give up that canal, lose our affordable housing. This God Suisse idea, I just learned about it too, from the Strong Towns magazine recently. And the more I got into it, the more I realized that was a terrific solution potentially for this site.
Madam Mayor, John, thank you. I appreciate you sharing some of that history there. I remember conversations about daylighting that canal in the Lusk Street Master Plan. So,
and I have lived there for 40 years.
Yep. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Madam Mayor, while there are other attendees to the meeting online, I don't have anybody with their hand raised.
All right. Would anybody else like to speak? Now's the time to raise your hand and we'll be able to call on you.
Madam Mayor, we have people quickly raising their hands, so I will promote Fred Fritchman first.
Fred Fritchman, you're up. You're being promoted. Just give us a second.
Followed by Ed McCluskey.
And then Ed McCluskey.
Okay, we should be good to go, Madam Mayor.
Fred, you should be good. Oh, we see Ed, but not Fred. There's Fred. Almost. Great. Fred, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor McLean and council members. My name is Fred Fritchman and I live at 1321 Denver Avenue in Boise. I ask that you reject this rezone tonight. It is substantially the same project that council rejected last fall from this same developer. The council's letter of revised findings dated October 14th states that the rezone request does not comply with the city's rezone criteria. The RO zone is designed to provide a buffer between the high-intensity commercial use and high-density residential use. The subject property is located adjacent to low and medium-density residential areas. Allowing a project this intense in direct proximity to single-family homes would set a dangerous precedent for Boise's R1 zoned areas. The letter also mentions that the rezone and project do not comply with Blueprint Boise's mixed-use vision for this intersection. It still doesn't. One 2,400 square foot coffee shop space and a 547 bed student housing project do not a mixed-use center make. In a nutshell, this project has not significantly changed since the iteration you denied last fall. It's still a private dormitory plopped down next to a long-established neighborhood of much lower density. As an active neighborhood participant on zoning issues and applications for 25 years, I'd like to comment briefly on the process this application has followed. I understood that applicants had to wait a year after denial by the city before resubmitting the same project. I am just astonished that planning allowed this application, this new application, to be submitted. It seems to me the application should have been rejected at the front counter. Neighbors who passionately and eloquently testified against this project last year probably thought they could relax now, and the city might even initiate a charrette process to develop some ideas for these parcels that better fit the mixed-use vision for it embodied in Blueprint Boise. Instead, barely 2 months after your denial, neighbors were compelled, if they still have the energy and will, to mobilize to oppose this nearly identical so-called new project. People get tired, they move away, they give up. I ask that you deny the application on its merits as before. Additionally, maybe planning should develop a better rubric for evaluating applications so that neighbors don't have to continue fighting the same project because the system let them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. It's good to see you.
You too, thank you.
Ed, welcome.
Hi, good to see you. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you. I like the lines of that wall behind you, by the way.
Oh, really? Well, thank you. See what homeowners can do on their own without somebody from, never mind, I won't do that. Look, I just want to speak briefly to the education side of things. A lot of assumptions about that. In the 1990s, massive open online courses were predicted to be the mainline future of higher education. To borrow a line from one of my students, that was so last century. Then 2 weeks ago, Google announced its plans to disrupt higher ed through massive distributed online courses. I'm often tempted to reply that many remarks are so last second, as the reality of shrinking needs for actual student housing apart from where people in general live is about bank accounts. So, whether your family went to BSU once upon a time, whether you went to BSU or are going there now, none of these experiences alone is enough to decide in favor of more student housing outside of existing BSU boundaries. The P&Z Commission revealed no knowledge circulating about student populations going forward. As a full-time academic whose field is the history of media and communication, I've used and taught with technology across continents while on Fulbrights and international guest profs. Last century and this one, Boise students would drink morning coffee on camera while we were ending the day in the seminar across the pond. The pandemic since then has revealed major cracks in higher education in relation to growth. The wish to get back to normal is understandable, but that will not happen here, nor at the 600 plus other Boise states nationwide. Normal has changed its trajectory in those respects. So if BSU and developers think we'll be able to buck the shrinking campus, then I think BSU should require students to try some other things, like, and invest in other things, like satellites, as one of your earlier letters said. Satellites with shuttles, perhaps, to campus. In any event, it's irrelevant, but even more costly beyond student housing to have a plan to build big for what is still essentially a monoculture. And that, I take it, was a big piece of your rejection last time around. I don't buy the argument that this is multi-use housing or a neighborhood activity center. And I certainly don't buy the subtext that more students are coming, look out. That's a question to be asked of researchers in this field. So I thank you for your time, and it's really good to see you all again.
Thank you, Ed. It's really good to see you too. Take care.
You too.
Madam Mayor, we have Dan and Janet Rollinger.
Great. Dan and Janet, are you together?
We are. I think maybe just I will speak unless my wife says otherwise.
Okay, and if she decides she'd like to afterwards, she can.
I hope you all are doing well. I just want to say something that is really, I don't think in general neighborhood is opposed to development on this lot. It's the right development. And I strongly believe that great neighborhoods are complete and host mixed uses that support our daily lives. I think they should be diverse, compact, connected, both from not only a walkability, bikeable, perspective, but also from a social perspective. And when a forced monoculture really on four corners of an intersection that is adjacent to neighborhoods, it really limits that ability to interact, especially when there is no opportunity. If you think about it, the future plan for Boise State is to build some additional housing across the street. They're not going to have services. You have this building, 550 students. You have Identity, 300 students. You have Eagle Point. These are all high density residential areas or apartment areas without the services that would lead to creating a culture that is really convivial, dynamic, diverse, complex. I mean, we have a huge opportunity here to create something special. I mean, truly special if you think about the transition from a college campus to the community and how that interchange and interchange of ideas happens. I know having a 24-year-old daughter has changed my perspective on a lot of things over this last year. And so, you know, that opportunity to interact is so important, but the space, the quality of retail, the ability to interact has got to be part of that interchange. And I don't see that happening. I don't see the future of it happening if projects like this are approved and completed. So that's really all I have to say. I think we're really missing an opportunity here to do something truly special. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Jan or Janet, did you want to add anything?
No, I think what we're really looking for is just a more diverse housing, not just strictly and primarily student housing. We have such a wonderful neighborhood up here, down there. We are separated by the 50-foot drop, but that's ground level. Once this project is finished, it's actually above our lower property line. What happens down there is in our backyard. We love our neighbors now. We love college students. We love professors, couples. I mean, it's just, we were very sad that this project, we would lose that diversity of the neighborhood. That's pretty much where we're at.
Thank you. And thanks to both of you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Madam Mayor, Lori DeCare.
Hi, Lori, you're up.
Okay, hi.
Hi, we can see and hear you.
Okay, good. Lori DeCare, 7154 West State Street, number 148. Here we are 1 year later looking at version 2.0 of this proposal. My testimony then, as it is now, has to do with the state of our housing market and the unprecedented and economic violence of gentrification and displacement. Any changes the developer made to the plan appear to just be tokens to satisfy the critiques received from this body. Likewise, I have made minor tweaks to my testimony that acknowledge how much more dire the housing situation has become. We are in the midst of a nationwide housing affordability crisis. Idaho just made the New York Times for having the highest rent increase in the country, 12% over 1 year during a pandemic and with record unemployment. We can't build our way out of a housing crisis. When speculators destabilize our housing markets, we all pay a high price in lost productivity, stress-related illness, hospital visits, and public services to compensate for the loss of community when a neighborhood is erased. When outside private equity like CDG operates Boise's rental market by remote control, that rent stream is siphoned out of Boise's economy and sent to St. Louis or wherever the corporation and or its shareholders are based. In this case, approximately $4 million a year that would otherwise circulate through local businesses would be lost from our economy. When proposed development requires an amendment of the zoning ordinance law, it is Boise's responsibility to drive a hard bargain in the public's interest. In this case, affordable housing in exchange for allowing more density for a developer, particularly in this scenario where the development demolitions 25 sound, habitable, and naturally occurring affordable units. According to Boise's zoning code, rezones should only be granted if it's in the public good, quote, is in the best interest of the public convenience and general welfare. Being a strong property rights state, Idaho Supreme Court has upheld the power of land use agencies to maintain existing zoning, so the city is starting from a sound bargaining position to get an exaction. There is legal precedent from right here in the Treasure Valley as ACHD regularly uses exactions with developers to get public facilities. Likewise, the city should hold firm on a no net loss of affordable housing policy and make the following 3 requirements. A 1-for-1 replacement of affordable housing, so 25 units are priced for someone making under 60% AMI or double the minimum wage for 30 years, not 5, not 15, but 30. A relocation package for all Wright and Bob Place residents to counter the destabilizing impacts of being displaced and the irreplaceable loss of their community and support system. The 2-bedroom units with doors look like they are set up to be Airbnb units. So the council should consider prohibiting rentals of less than 6 months to discourage short-term rentals in the units. Where the city has played a role in incentivizing gentrification and desire for developers to build high-end housing, the city needs to put its finger on the scale for housing that is chronically underproduced, that which is 0 to 60% AMI, or housing which is affordable for people making less than $20 an hour. Where will Boise draw the line? When will we declare that the health, safety, and welfare of our current residents and community integrity matter more than the future transient students to fill luxury apartments? Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Madam Mayor, the last person with their hand up, excuse me, is Ted Rithman.
Ted, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
It's pronounced Rithman.
Rithman, hi, Ted. Lori, thanks for joining us. I didn't say goodbye. Ted, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and councilpersons. My name is Ted Rithman. I reside at 2001 West Boise Avenue, apartment number 16. I'm a longtime resident of the city. I've lived here about 35 years. In this neighborhood particularly, I've lived here like 32 years, went to BSU. As a matter of fact, I even was at BSU at the same time as Councilperson Sanchez at one point. For me, like this project needs to be put on hold. It does not support the neighborhood, and it's mostly, it's pretty much all for students. Now, I've gone to BSU. I understand that they might need housing, but if that is indeed the case, BSU has just ripped up part of the land that they own to build a stadium. If they say they need a stadium, I say that they need more housing. They could use that area to build at least maybe 2 or 3 student dorms. For me, much like Ms. DeCare had pointed out, no relocation packages, like it's nice, it's a nice little offer, but it's one thing if you choose to move because you found a better job, you found a better neighborhood to live in, that's one thing. But when you're being forced out and then someone says, oh, hey, here's a consolation prize. Don't get me wrong, it's nice. But for me, it means I have to move someplace else. And especially with the lack of transportation at my fingertips, if I have to move, it means I end up moving out of the city or out of the state, which means I have to pretty much find a new job. Chances of me finishing up my degree at BSU, it's pretty much not going to happen because especially if I ended up in Oregon for say, I'd end up having to pay out-of-state tuition. It makes no sense to have this project back less than 2 months after, or sorry, 5 months after City Council had denied it. There's been very minimal changes, if any. And I agree with what someone said. They're nothing more than just token changes, as if they're trying to mark off boxes to please everyone. I would strongly ask that this be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Madam Mayor, I have no one else with their hand raised this evening.
If there's nobody else with their hand raised, I'm just going to give you one last chance just to make sure. And then do we close public hearing and then questions or questions? I mean, we've got rebuttal. Okay.
Still no one with their hand raised.
Okay, I'm going to ask that that we move into rebuttal to the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council, Deborah Nelson for the applicant. To address some of the comments we've heard, starting with the representative of the Depot Bench Neighborhood Association, I just wanted to point out that the applicant did reach out to them along with the Southeast Neighborhood Association, and their initial contact, the Depot Bench Neighborhood Association said they would send a member to the CENA meeting to participate there. And the applicant has had many meetings with the CENA representatives. So they certainly have had a lot of outreach with the neighbors, and including on Mesa Vista and with the tenants as well. Bus routes, there was a comment that there's only one bus route in front of the site. It's great that there is a bus stop directly in front of the site that will be added. And in addition to that, there are 4 routes within a half mile and even much closer that go downtown to Nampa Meridian, to Caldwell, and out to Harris Ranch. So you can really get anywhere from a short walk from this location. So it's a great transit location. There's comments about the unit mix, and really the opponents, I think, slight the project by calling this a dormitory. The project serves a need of an unmet need for students that are on BSU's campus that don't have enough housing on campus. And those 4 and 5 bedroom units are ideal for pulling those students that are not finding on-campus housing, but are moving into the Southeast Boise neighborhood instead, and providing them a home where they can come into and live in an apartment building that is suited for their needs, that's tailored to their needs, that gives them those alternative transportation options, and that places them right next to campus where they can walk and get out of their cars. These are also the same bedroom units that are the most affordable in the project and provide a living environment that's desired by a lot of students. In addition, there's been significant changes to the design of the building to really tailor it to suit more young professionals and university workers and others that may be looking for this type of housing but want the smaller format unit type. And there's 42% of the units in the building serve those folks. And so that's a significant number. That's 74 of the units out of 175. So there's been a lot of movement, of course, with the exterior access. That's going to be tailored to a different type of user that's interested in this space. I think there's also been a lot of discussion about commercial, and I appreciate the comments and questions from the council on that, because I think you're trying to find that right balance of, well, what makes sense for this location? And I think as everyone comments, there are trade-offs with commercial. Some of the opponents of the project just say, no, it should be more commercial, but they're also worried about traffic, and commercial, of course, generates more traffic than residential. It also requires more surface parking, particularly in these non-downtown commercial locations. If you create a destination commercial location, you have to provide a lot of surface parking. And that's part of why the size of this activity center isn't well suited for that kind of bound crossing style that people are describing. We've squeezed in as many surface parking spaces as we can to increase that retail, to offer that alternative option for you to consider. But again, that's a trade-off you have to consider with the commercial. And then finally, and I think the council and others have touched on this, that it has to be viable. We're very focused on that because we want to make sure that we're not going to have a vacant corner. We want to really have this be very vibrant. I think the same concern that you have. Commissioner Blanchard at the P&Z, I thought, said this very well when he was saying he just didn't think that this was a viable neighborhood activity center. He looked at the existing commercial businesses along Boise Avenue and believed that they were struggling. He specifically said, you could pick 5,000 square feet, and he didn't think that people would come to it. And the reason is, I think he pointed to the existing commercial that's very close out on Vista and Broadway, and that's where people are going to go for their destination commercial. So what makes sense here is a small scale retail, and that's what we've proposed. That's what's called for in your comprehensive plan for this location. And that's what we've proposed. We think that 2375 square foot makes sense, but certainly appreciate that if the council thinks that more than that is viable here, what we can make work is the 3,500. And so, and certainly are happy to do that if that's the council's preference. In the end, there is more housing that's needed, both in this neighborhood and throughout the city, and building more housing does help the city address the housing crisis. And this is just a great location for it, at the intersection of these two arterials along a transit line in this designation that calls for high density residential, adjacent to the BSU campus and so close to so many amenities where people can really get out of their cars. And this project reflects so many great design principles, smart growth principles, but really locating it right next to the BSU campus where students and BSU employees can walk is the best feature it has. And that's why this location is so important and so perfect for this project. And we ask for your support, and would stand for any more questions you have.
Are there additional questions?
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
couple questions, Deborah. So one is about the canal in the back and some of the open aspects of the Bub Canal. My understanding, reading through some of the minutes and the proposal, is that all of that area would be covered. And I guess my question is any of it available to not be covered, so to stay daylit, as it does bring both a historic aspect and wildlife to that area, and I think an amenity to the people who are around there. So questions about any possibility of keeping any of it open.
Madam Mayor, Council Member Halliburton, no, the drain will be relocated. I mean, currently it's an
Deb, your mic did something weird again. Suddenly we couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yep, you're back to where you were.
Thank you. So the drain currently is open, but it's running under the Reidenbach apartment building, something that could not be approved today. The buildings are crumbling into that drain. And so it's not a current safe open feature. And so we will be relocating that. It won't be under buildings. It will be covered though. That is the desire of the drainage district. And that is the plan that they have approved, is to relocate it and to bury it. It creates efficiency for them and their water flows. It's safer. And so that is their desire. They did not support it being open in the current location that it is. It does have different portions of it, as you noted, Councilmember Halliburton, that have been buried over time to increase that efficiency as the properties have developed around it.
And Madam Mayor, a couple follow-ups.
Yes.
And so that, I'm guessing that area, that extended or increased setback that you have from the hill is probably where that runs under. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that's correct.
Okay, couple more. So if the retail space was expanded to 3,500, and potentially this is a question for staff, does that increase the requirement for on-street parking, or is the amount of on-street parking available still sufficient for that increase?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that would increase the required number of parking spaces for the retail space. Usually we calculate that at 1 space per 300 square feet. And at this time, there's no on-street parking proposed. It's just the ground level next to the access point.
Perfect, thank you. And so Deborah, with that, is there space for those additional on-site parking?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, the design.
Deb, it happened again.
Technology is not my friend today.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Better. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's.
Move the laptop around a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, when we looked at what could be feasible there, we evaluated how much surface parking would have to be available for the additional square feet of retail. And then we had to squeeze in those parking spaces. And so we were able to get 12 there on that surface upper lot, which would accommodate up to the 3,500 square feet of retail. And so we were able to fit that. That did cause us to lose the one of those frontage units because that takes up the frontage.
Great. And then two more questions, and then I'll take a break. One, Deborah, I think that you can answer this. The exterior bike parking that you have off the back, is any of that planned on being covered? And what's your, how do you envision that being used? Is that for guests? Is that for people who are staying there? What's the use of the bike parking in back? And are you planning on having it covered?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, no, those were not planned to be covered at this point. There's 54 spaces there, and that is intended to be available for guests. In the garage, there's 496 secure covered spaces, several hundred more than is required to serve the guests or the residents there. And they will have a bike repair station as well. So they'll have a great opportunity to encourage them all to have bikes to come to your shop.
Great. That makes sense that the long-term parking that you were planning is inside. And so my final question, and I apologize, but I'm forgetting the gentleman's name from the developer's name who's there with you.
Grant Stiles, yes.
Is he available for one question?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my final question is, you brought something up earlier, I think it was a quote, if anyone would qualify, then they would have availability to these apartments. So it's not supposed to be student only. Anybody who actually wanted to apply and qualified would be able to use or to rent out the apartments. Did I get that right?
Yes, and we're legally required. Fair housing laws require us to, if we set standards, and we have to stand by those standards from a qualification perspective. And we are not able to discriminate based on whether you're a student or whether you're not.
Perfect. And then just the follow-up to that is a question: if you plan on taking any type of housing vouchers that might let somebody qualify for that apartment, are you planning on making those available to voucher holders?
That's a great question. I want to give you an honest answer. It's something we haven't considered. I would say that I think I'm legally obligated potentially, but it's if they qualify based on income and they have a voucher, I would say we would be 100% open to it. But there's requirements, Section 8 housing and affordable housing isn't something that we have a lot of expertise in. So I don't want to give you an answer and say no when I'm legally required to. But I would say that if we aren't legally restricted and we're allowed to, don't think it's an issue. But it's just something we've never had to deal with. That's my honest answer.
Yep, and maybe just to clarify, I don't know that there's any actual legal restrictions. I think that sometimes there's a little extra work that takes place on the property manager. In the end, the cash is cash. It comes from a combination of potentially a person's personal income and, some government funding as well, but it's the same amount of money that anybody else would be renting. I don't know that there's a requirement, but I was just curious if there was any intention or thoughts to that, as I thought that there may be some people currently living there who might qualify.
Yeah, currently there's no subsidies, there's no Section 8 vouchers or any.
Brant, we've lost your voice.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, currently there are no Section 8 vouchers, tenants that have any subsidies right now on the property. And we have the 10 affordable units that we'll be allowing the age or income restricted individuals to occupy. I would say that we're open to Section 8 as long as they meet certain requirements, like similar to our other tenants. I don't know if those are contradictory though.
Thank you.
Other questions? Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Couple of questions. My first question really has to do with the unit mix. The original proposal, well, the 42% of the unit count is 1 or 2 bedroom. In the original proposal, it was over 50%. Wonder if you could address why it ended up that way.
There were a lot of revisions that we did when we pulled the building back another 20 to 30 feet.
It's happening again.
We can't hear you again. Sorry.
Sorry. How about now?
This doesn't typically happen when your attorney is presenting, so it's been an interesting night. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but you're going in and out.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was some modifications overall to the building. I think there really hasn't. When we presented our project previously, there was a good mix of units, and I think there was potentially a misunderstanding as it relates to how we market and who is allowed to live or who would be living in our projects. All of our projects, we typically always have a good mix of units between, smaller, what we call smaller format and larger format. So I think there was a potential misunderstanding of who would be in our buildings in sort of first round. I think this is more of, what we spent today, maybe just trying to educate everybody of what our intent was and how we look at student housing and market rate housing. And there's a lot of student housing focused developers that don't do any market rate. And you will see in most of their projects, they will have anywhere from 90 to 100% all 4-bedroom and 5-bedroom units, not really accommodating more of the market rate type units. That's not how we approach this. We do see, undergrads living in a 1-bedroom and sometimes in a 2-bedroom, but it's definitely more expensive. So I think the overall change in the mix was more of us maintaining, size and, financial feasibility, but still offering what we believe to be as a diverse unit mix that would accommodate both, undergraduates in the larger formats and, graduates, professors, urban dwellers in the smaller unit mix or units, studios, 1s, 2s. I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. What about short-term rentals? Do you ever allow short-term rentals in your projects?
No, all of our leases are 12-month leases. And we don't allow for subleasing without an approval, and that approval is always the subleases, the individuals taking over the remainder of the lease. So we don't have short-term Airbnbs or anything like that.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I had a question about accessibility and folks who might want to live in this development. And can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not an accessibility expert, but there's a lot of accessibility requirements in the building code that require a number of our units to be designed from an accessible perspective. Depending on the state, all of the, so our building will be ADA accessible. I don't know exactly how many units will be accessible, but it's all dictated by building code. There's definitely a significant amount of accessible units within our project.
Just a follow-up, Madam Mayor.
Sure.
So someone who wants to live on the upper level, there will be available units for somebody who wants to live on the upper level?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like affordable housing. We can't really discriminate on where we locate the units. They have to be, randomized throughout the project. So all of our, access to the building, entrances, elevators, units on certain floors are, ADA compliant.
And so do you embrace universal design?
Can you give me an example of what universal?
It means that, and I'm sure we've all had this experience where, maybe you hurt your hand or you wrenched your ankle, and thank goodness there's universal design, because it means that whoever designed this space, it's for everyone to use. You don't have to be somebody who uses a wheelchair on a regular basis, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would say that we have a lot of accessible units that are occupied by individuals that don't specifically need those units to be accessible. And they live very well, even though they're designed to be accessibly accessed for someone who doesn't particularly need those.
My guess is if we all live long enough, we're all going to need universal design. But thank you so much.
Yes, and in our architect yes, it is.
We lost you for a second. You said our architect
just texted us and said, yes, it is designed around universal design.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thank you.
I apologize for the technical issues.
Don't worry about it. It's, we've all gotten used to having the occasional snafus in these things. Anybody else?
Madam Mayor, could I ask a question of staff?
Yes, in fact, I should just say for council, let's ask questions of staff as well now, before I close the public hearing. So yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm sure staff looked at the new proposal, compared it to the old one, and made a determination that there was substantial differences in order to accept it. Wonder if you could just go through those.
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, yes, the project definitely was different according to our view, as far as the tree mitigation proposal, the tenant assistance package, as well as the affordable housing package, the design, the access points. They were, actually have a slide. Matt, can you share my screen? Oops. There it is. Of just the number, just the different comparisons between the two projects, and that there certainly and there are differences. Code also says that no application that has been denied shall be resubmitted in that substantially same form in less than a year's time. The original application was submitted in October of 2019, and this application before you was submitted in December of 2020.
Thank you.
Anything else for staff or the applicant? All right, it doesn't look like it. So with that, I will close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that we approve CAR 20-25 CDG Acquisitions LLC, 1909 and 2001 West Boise Avenue, a rezone of 3.3 acres from C1D to R2 and R2 to RODDA.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Shall we discuss?
Madam
Councilmember Whittings, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just want to thank the developer for really coming back with a project that reflected so many of our concerns. I really do think it activates the street level. And, having attended Boise State, I always sort of wondered, where would the University Village be if Boise State had one? And it's not at this corner. So I think that the dream of having this kind of be that really active University Village area is just not realistic. This is going to give a lot of great housing for the university community. It will have some commercial. I think that adding that crossing at Joyce is a pretty big deal. That'll add a lot of safety to the project. And the detached sidewalks, if we're able to get some better bike facilities, that'll be a definite add to this too. So I want to thank, again, the developer for taking everything into account. I know it's got to be a little bit frustrating to have 6 people with various opinions on what needs to happen with the project, but I think you've done a great job.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be supporting the motion. I've been extremely impressed with the level of redesign and changes that the developers made to the project since the last time we've seen it, and especially in ensuring that it stays at no more than 3 levels. And appreciated the setback, the additional bike parking. And, I think it's in a good location, and it's right there on the campus. I'm a BSU graduate as well, lived in Towers Residence Hall, and certainly understand the benefits of having close access to your school and classrooms when you don't have a vehicle. I would have been using one of those bike parking spots as well. And I appreciate the additional retail, which, as Councilmember Whittings just said, I also don't think it would turn into a thriving area like some might imagine, but having some there will certainly help benefit those that are living in the facility and around. And so it'll turn into a great meeting location and serve as a real asset. I think in the long run, we'll look back at this as a good decision if it's approved tonight. Thank you.
Sure, Council President.
Thank you. I am going to support the motion tonight if the maker of the motion and the seconder will consider a couple of amendments. One, the applicant offered to increase the caliper inches of tree mitigation in condition G from 176 to 250, and adding condition H that would require the rent for the parking to be a separate charge from the living space rent with bike parking free would just ensure that there would always be an incentive not to bring a car. And so I'd ask if the makers of the motion would consent to adding those two things.
Madam Mayor, the maker of the motion consents.
So does
And
the
the
second.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Are those
Now-
changes noted? All right, go ahead.
Now, if I could address the project. This isn't a perfect project. You know, I appreciate that the neighborhood would like us to direct two private parties to live a different dream for their land than these private parties have for that land. And there are a lot of times I wish I could do that. I haven't figured out how I have the power to do that. What I do have the power to do is ask that what does get proposed meet our plans and our zoning. In this case, the plan calls for a mixed-use activity center. It identifies this as a neighborhood activity center. And while it's true that Bound Crossing and Hyde Park are neighborhood activity centers, there's also much smaller ones that have just a bit of retail here and a bit of retail there. I think this project could, in fact, have more retail. I think over the years, if it proves that more retail will be beneficial and sellable, they'll adjust their amenity space and or one of these walk-up units to do just that. Private property owners typically respond to the market in that way. And so I'm comfortable with that. I'm not particularly pleased with the mix of units. Frankly, it was a better mix of units before, but in return for that change, the height exception was taken away. And the units that do exist that are different are walkout units, which didn't exist before. And those units do rent to a different person. They attract a different person. And so I think that in all, it's an acceptable change. One of the other things I was concerned about was the streetscape at a town center. I think the developer did what they could to meet those streetscape standards. I think ACHD still has some work to do to live up to their own livable streets guide in what this calls for at this corner. And to the neighborhood's contention that this will set the rest of time, the corner for the rest of time, I would note that Maverick is not dissimilar to the building across the street, which is now a smoke connection. And one would hope at some point that building will redevelop. And it frankly doesn't make much sense on that corner for there to be much else than retail. And so I do see opportunity if the increase in density, the increase in intensity at this corner proves to create a market for additional retail, that there is an opportunity for that. I would note that the site that Big Judd's is on could redevelop, hopefully with Big Judd's and something else over time. And, you know, these things are not set in stone. I know that development looks like something that is going to be there forever. The development that is there today was there for a lot of years. It's a lovely development. I don't think anyone can argue with that. I don't own it, so I can't keep it what it is today. And so all in all, given the shortage of housing in this market, given the voluntary offer by the developer to provide both affordable units in this development and assistance for relocation, given the opportunity to make those affordable units longer lasting with our housing density bonus. Like I say, it's not perfect, but it is, I think, something that will serve us well. I'd like to make one last comment if I could. I will say that Boise State isn't here tonight to testify. I wish they were. We need Boise State to build some housing. They've indicated that in a year or 2 or 3, they'll start thinking about some freshman or sophomore housing, and we need them to step up sooner than that. They've got land. They've got to figure out a way to do that. And so I would implore them to start working on that.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
took me a minute to chime in after seconding the motion. The basis of my second, some of you may recall that I supported a previous version of this project as well. This one is substantially different, but going back through the pretty voluminous record that's here, the primary reasons for my second are that this property is designated mixed use on the land use map, and that the RO zone is one of the many permissible implementing zones that can be used there. This property is located right in the center of a neighborhood activity center, and the form and type and intensity of development allowed in the RO zone are consistent with all of those things. I do believe that the development agreement, that the draft development agreement that's been prepared helps ensure some compatibility between the BSU campus and the adjacent residential uses, as well as the activity center. And I think that this design and this plan fulfills the goals of Blueprint Boise and our other planning documents. I think it's lovely and nice that the developer here has offered to include affordable housing. That doesn't drive my decision, frankly. I think it's incredibly generous and wonderful that they are providing assistance to the tenants who will be displaced, the current residents there. That's the kind of gesture that a good partner and a good future member of the community makes, but that doesn't drive my decision. What really drives my decision to second this motion is that the project that we're looking at is consistent with our planning documents. So that's the basis of my support for the motion.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Sure, go ahead.
I appreciate everything that my fellow council members have brought up, and I really appreciate Council President Clegg's sort of long view of it doesn't have to always be this way. Right before Council President chimed in, I was going to request, and I think it probably would have failed, to increase that retail space to 3,500. I'm not convinced that it couldn't be successful, and the reason why I believe that is I've seen it happen in other places. I was one of the first tenants that moved into the Lust District, and there was nothing else there. And we were the one lone destination. And because we were so unique, people came to us. And then a coffee shop came in and nobody came to that. And then another restaurant came in and that got some use. And then 2 more restaurants came in and a brewery. And all of a sudden the neighborhood was happening. And it became another place that people would like to go. I think that there's still a possibility for this intersection to look like that. The tobacco connection that's across the street, I don't know that it will be there forever, and there is an opportunity for more retail space there. And I do think that there is a vision and a dream of what that place could look like and how it could really serve people in a way that they didn't have to walk or drive, or they didn't have to drive to the places that they wanted to go, but they could walk or bike, and they could really feel a sense of place on that corner. Would love to have seen 3,500 square feet there to make room for some of the neighbors' vision, because I do think that they know what the needs are and what they would like to use. It's not a deal breaker for me, because I think Council President Clegg brought up the idea that it doesn't have to stay that way, that there are abilities to retrofit. And I guess I would encourage the developer to look into that, when that development happens, to evaluate long-term needs, and if some of those surrounding spots on that retail area might be able to be looked at in the future. The last thing I guess I just want to bring up is, and I was thinking about it last night on my bike ride home, because I was thinking about this decision that we're going to make tonight, and it was a lot about social responsibility. What is our social responsibility? And this developer came forward with the proposal and an attempt to assist the tenants in what I believe is a thoughtful way that they didn't have to do. We didn't force them to do that. They volunteered to. And I do think that there is some social responsibility in that. And I think that that is something that should be celebrated. I would encourage them to look at vouchers as well, because I think that that's another aspect of social responsibility that really benefits you just as much in the long run as the people that you're offering it to. And I think that we as neighbors, we have a lot that we can do on our own. Vacant rooms in our own houses, selling our houses to somebody who might not be able to afford it and taking $10,000 less or whatever it may need to be. But I do appreciate that offer. And I want to make sure that that's noted as well. I'll support the effort and I'll support the motion with that limited space. I'd like to see more. I think there's still a chance we can do it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is so painful. I don't know which neighbor it was that provided the photo of that gorgeous tree and that beautiful lush courtyard, but as Council President Clegg stated, we're not going to be able to preserve that, and that's tragic. It's really sad. And as one of the folks testifying who alluded to us going to school together at the same time, I think it was Mr. Rithman. You know what I still miss? I still miss that row of bungalows on University Drive, which was our little version of Greek Row back in the day. And look what it is now. It's filled with students. We have student housing all along University Drive. So it is painful that we have to say goodbye to some of the features that are so meaningful to our city and to our neighbors. But it is especially painful to see 25 units, affordable units lost. And I don't want to support this, but I'm going to, because as I pointed out, I've been here long enough. That was my neighborhood at one point. I lived near Boise State for 8 years. So I 100%, feel in my heart the pain of seeing that change. But as I have said over the past nearly 4 years that I've served on this council, I've been both. I've been the interloper, the unwelcome feature in a community, and I've also had to tolerate other people moving in and building high and taking my views away. So, part of the reason that last fall I proposed, or I suggested that this council consider starting their council meetings with a land acknowledgement is for this very reason. I know the descendants of the original inhabitants of the Boise Valley, and they watch us. They watch us fight and argue over who belongs where and what should be torn down and what should go up in its place. And that this is a big reason why, because I want us to be grounded in the fact that we do all our business on someone else's land that they never ceded over. And this is all about legalities, except we don't acknowledge that legality. We go about it and we ignore it. So I just wanted to put that on record as well. And I hope that we will have that discussion and revisit that at some point this year. So yes, reluctantly, I will be supporting the motion. Again, It's painful.
Well, thank you. With that, everybody's chimed in, and I won't be voting tonight, but I do want to just say thank you to everybody that joined us. It was wonderful to see those of you we saw, to hear from those of you that we just heard. And I'd encourage everyone, I really, really appreciated hearing from folks, having this conversation, listening to council. But I'm just going to encourage folks as we move forward. I know we're going to see so many of you again, to think about joining us here in the council chambers. It was great to have John, but it'd be so wonderful to see more of you as we work through these really tough decisions. If you're comfortable doing it, we have a lot of space between chairs. It's 10 feet between all places, and we require masks, and it is so lovely to see you and to hear you, and we'd love to do it in the chambers as well. So thanks to everybody that participated this evening. Really appreciate it.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And with that,
Madam Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks all.